Thumbs up.
Come on.
You're all set.
Okay. You can tell that already? Beautiful. All right.
And you're on. You good?
We're good. Where are you going, Keith?
I'm going to
Yes, sir.
Like what, 2023 or
It's
something?
town council.
No, she gave me an email password,
Yeah, boy, I think that's what it was.
but did it have a like a question mark, and
Yes,
question mark
it
and
had
an exclamation mark? And a-
yeah, I think it had an exclamation. So they're gonna have to pass. So it's just gonna have to be a top.
That's okay. Instead of like a superpower. It really is.
Are you good to go? Well, sort of. I wanted to do something else beforehand, but
I'm here.
hold up. I wanted to open up the agenda so I could get the HCA, but
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and do that.
are they ready? Or-
Yeah, they're waiting on you.
It's running, but
Thank you.
yep, well set to go. Thank you so much. Good.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our January 16th, Portsmouth Town Council meeting. Before we begin, I do need to go through evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, you would exit either the rear of the auditorium, out the front doors to the left, across the parking lot, and wait at the edge of the parking lot for further instruction. You exit the front of the auditorium, go down the hallways, follow the exit signs, exit the building, again across the parking lot, and wait for further instruction. We needed to get that out of the way. A little more housekeeping. We are live streaming tonight as well. So anybody that might be participating remotely with the Zoom feature, or if you're calling in, if you're on Zoom, there's an icon to indicate you have a question. If you're calling in, *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone. *9 would indicate that you have a question. Anybody participating remotely tonight or in person at the podium, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And now if we could begin with our pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Our first action is roll call.
Mr. Katzman?
Here.
Ms. Abbott? Here. Mr. Gleason?
Here.
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Dr. Ryan?
Here.
Ms. Aguirre?
Here.
First order tonight, it's old business. This is a public hearing discussion, there's one item on the agenda. It's host community agreement between the town of Fort Town and Southcoast Wind LLC. Council will consider and vote on a proposal to a host community agreement in connection with Southcoast proposed offshore wind energy project that is subject of Southcoast's application to the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board, EFSB, for a license to construct major energy facilities. EFSB docket number SB 2022-02. Additionally, under section 6 of the proposed host community agreement, that provides for certain payments to be made by Southcoast to the town, which includes annual payments, of which a fixed portion in the amount of $125,000 for each phase of the first 10 years of the project would be allocated in payment in lieu of taxes, pilots, and stabilized amount of taxes to be paid on account of Southcoast underground onshore export cables to be located in the town. This is the section that requires a public hearing tonight. So this is a public hearing. We will allow comments. What I would like to offer, though, for folks that will be speaking, coming to the podium, we will try to accommodate everyone, allow them to speak. What I ask is for your cooperation during the public comment period. Please keep any talking really to a minimum, no talking, because everything echoes forward and it's very hard for folks to hear what's going on. Additionally, folks speaking, if you were for the project, against the project, and you hear something that you agree with it, if you want to agree with it, you're free to agree with it or disagree with it. But what we're trying to do is keep things moving from the standpoint of if everybody that's opposed to it for a specific reason keeps coming up and says I'm opposed to it for X, and the next person comes up and opposed to it for the very same thing, we just want to try to keep that redundancy to a minimum. We understand. You can just get up and say you're either for it or against it for the reasons previously stated, and it will still be noted by the council. And I know that there's a lot of folks that are going to want to speak, and I do want to accommodate everyone. This is not our first time discussing this project. There have been some workshops. There was a presentation before the council, and we did indicate at prior meetings that there was no host community agreement. That host community agreement has now been finalized and submitted, and this is the opportunity for the host community agreement to be weighed on by the public. So what I'd like to do, again, is just go through a few things. The HCA pertains to Southcoast application to the Energy Facility Siting Board for a license to construct transmission facilities in Rhode Island to connect Southcoast offshore wind generation project located in federal waters to a regional transmission system at Brayton Point in Somerset. The reason that they're here before us and before the EFSB is because the cables, the transmission cables, will come up the Secana River and cross Portsmouth somewhere between the Park Ave, up Boyd's Lane, down Anthony Road, and then re-enter Mount Hope Bay in some location that hasn't finally been determined, somewhere between Montauk and maybe the wetlands. What we're here tonight is really to discuss the HCA, which is the town's, the HCA and the EFSB. The EFSB is going to require the town to weigh in on an advisory opinion. We do not have the authority to approve or deny a project. What the EFSB is going to ask us to do is weigh in on our opinion of the project as it relates to specific areas where the town has jurisdiction. And when I say that, what I mean is the EFSB could ask the town council to weigh in on a noise variance. The town council has the authority to issue a noise variance. They could ask for DPW to weigh in on their opinion on impacts associated with the construction within the town street, town right of way. Could ask the planning board to weigh in, or I'm sorry, the building official to weigh in on soil erosion and sediment control. Planning board could get asked to weigh in, the zoning board could get asked to weigh in. Those opinions are based on what the town has the authority to oversee, as if it were its own project. EFSB is actually the approval authority here. So the town is not going to issue a yes or a no. We're going to issue an advisory opinion. We are not going to be asked to weigh in on things that we do not have jurisdiction over. So I know there are concerns about wetlands. Any issue with wetlands will be referred to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. Any issues that have to do with the Secana River are going to be referred to Coastal Resources Management Council and possibly the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. Those are the agencies that have the authority and the qualifications to review and issue approval opinions on those areas that they have jurisdiction. I just want to be clear to what our responsibilities are when asked by the EFSB to weigh in on an opinion. So there might be some misunderstanding about how much authority we have. We have authority to weigh in and issue an opinion on things that are controlled by the various boards or committees within the town of Portsmouth. So with that, I'd like to turn it over at this point to Southcoast to give a brief overview.
Thank you, Council. Barbara, yeah, please, if you could put those slides up. We're going to be very brief. We are going to go through probably 7 slides. We are considering some of the newcomers or others that are not familiar. Many of you, and I appreciate the fact that you are familiar with the project. As you know, Southcoast has held a variety of open houses and worked to communicate and address items, and spent time both here in, what was it, May 25th last year, as well as written responses on that. Let's jump to the slide when you're ready. Let me jump in here. You've heard in some of the media about the offshore wind industry going through headwinds. I think it's important that we, Southcoast Wind, Kelsey Perry, and myself, and our teammates in our project is a very active 60-some strong staff with our offices in Fall River and Boston. We are very much present in advancing this project. We are working hard to prepare bids for the upcoming tri-state solicitation, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, and are active on the wish to engage with the town of Portsmouth and develop a long-term relationship here with the ability to have a long-term operating project for all the reasons we're focused on in this transition to a renewable energy generation. As you recall, the overall project constitutes on the far left the offshore wind lease. It's a good 30 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. And then we'll have an offshore converter station and run the 2 HVDC cables. When we were here in May, we brought a sample of one of the cables, about 6 inches in diameter each. Those 2 cables will be in a bundle and will come ashore. And in order to conduct the lowest impact and lowest risk effort, we are coming across a quick neck rather than continuing up the narrow part of the top of the Secana. And
Just give me 1 second. The slides in Zoom aren't advancing. So what you're talking about, people at home can't see. Give it 1 second, please.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Man.
When you start again, if you talk a little bit closer into the microphone, it's not carrying. We want to as well.
Well,
No, all we can see is the screen. You can't see what the picture is.
So,
Yeah, that's not showing up on Zoom
okay.
right now. I slide in. Bigger
You
screen.
know what, I wonder if, yeah, I wonder if we make it a PDF, it hopefully would work.
Then you would just have to follow along with them.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
um,
Can you do that real quick?
I.
Sorry, folks, we're trying to make sure that people at home can see as well.
Great.
Yep. See that?
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
I know. I'm sorry.
Go back to Zoom. Go back to Zoom.
Mhm.
Are you sharing? Are you
She was-
sharing?
I was sharing
You
this.
are, so you need to access the slides from within Zoom. I keep watching you. You're opening the slides independently of Zoom, I think. I hope I'm right.
But I had prior to that, I had, the slides were already opened and I accessed it from Zoom.
So
I
you
shared
went, you
the screen.
shared the screen and you browsed to it from within Zoom?
It was already open and yes, I was in Zoom and I browsed to it.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's okay.
I was trying to help.
Yep,
Just-
I know. Actually, because I was like, well, it didn't, it's not being viewed at.
You shared it out.
Yeah.
So,
Go back to Zoom.
yeah, well, hang on. This for a sec. Right, so- All right, so it's all closed nice now. So we should be able to open it from here. I think.
Open at all though.
Right, I know right now it's not open. I had closed everything to try again. All right, so we can do that. I'm not sure. I know at the chamber, if somebody's showing a video, it can't work. So there it is, a slide, okay. So now if I go back into Zoom. Screen. Is it there now? Okay. I'm sorry,
Turn presenter mode off.
turn it off. Okay, yep.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Oops. Yeah.
Try these dots.
Okay, yeah, that's a good job. More slideshow. Side presenter view. There it is.
There you go.
Okay, sorry.
So pick the one that's in the bottom, go down.
Let's see.
There you go.
Let's see. All right, let's try that one.
I'm gonna slide two.
All right, let's.
Turn your mic on.
You don't have a move.
Um, it's, nope, not letting me do anything. Oh, there it goes. Okay, there it is. All right. I don't have a mic.
The project cables running the energy from the offshore wind lease would come across Aquidneck, labeled on this drawing as the intermediate. From my previous remarks is to cross on this land. You can see in the lower left a example of a duct bank, which is the cables, and that shows the ability to run the entire capacity of our lease area, 2,400 megawatts. You'll see two holes on the left, two on the right, so that's for a total of two projects coming through. This is standard, just as most utilities use. It's actually a little bit higher specification than some of the New England areas on how we will use a concrete slurry and other designs that correctly bury this for long life operation. The cables are standard copper and other inert materials and have a life of 60+ years. You can see the routes are coming along Rhode Island DOT on Boyd's Lane. I think we've discussed previously how we will on both ends of the project use horizontal directional drilling so that we will be going under the coastline, not any excavation on either of the coastlines. And then through the routes that you can see on the chart. And I think that really covers some of these aspects. Again, you've been through most of this. Next slide. Wanted to provide a little bit more specifics as we look at the town of Portsmouth on a construction period that we will be focusing on the winter months. We will be conducting the horizontal drilling in a very compact area with a controlled site. We will not be blocking traffic. This can stay maybe few periods of hours where we may have to go down to one lane, but we'll still be able to circulate around the Park Ave and Boyd's Lane area. The trench Again, I have some example photos. We'll progress along the shoulder. We will be working with all the agencies to ensure that anything done along the southern portion of Boyd's Lane is meeting all the requirements and if I may, restrictions that are determined through the permitting process and public participation in that. Coordination with the town. We work with the town, the DPW, the Rhode Island DOT, and the other entities to determine the best plans to move forward on that. And we will be providing a lot of communication for consideration, especially this evening on the host community agreement, is the fact that this is a buried underground cable with no substation, no above ground facilities. The cable will not be sending students to school. We will not be requiring fire services or police protection. This will be, as I say, an inert, no moving parts, infrastructure that will be buried similar to all the utility infrastructure, whether fiber or electric utility that we have around us. They will not have emit noise, and per the clear specifications, we will not have any concerns on magnetic fields compared to all the international standards in the data. We can spend a lot of time discussing that. We have and we will continue to engage on that front, but we have taken that head on to ensure that we are following best practices for any of the safety concerns across. Next slide. Just a few samples, again, quite familiar that you've seen in your lifetime, looking at installations that go along the side of a road. If there is any need, we can put steel plates over for the night, for the weekend, to allow traffic to continue. And the left gives you an idea of the rough size. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey.
Great, thank you, Lawrence. I'm just going to give a really quick update on where we are in the permitting process and highlight some areas for public participation. So we've been continuing our survey work. Most recently in November, we were in Portsmouth finishing up a geotechnical campaign where we looked at 13 boring locations in Portsmouth. We also completed in October a sediment sampling campaign in Mount Hope Bay, north of Aquidneck Island. So continuing on survey work to inform our permits as we continue to develop the project with state agencies. In December, we did receive our federal consistency certification from the CRMC in Rhode Island, the Coastal Resources Management Council, and continue to progress on permitting in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and at the federal level. Continuing on to public participation in general, we just wanted to highlight that the regulatory process does provide numerous opportunities to participate in public meetings or provide written comments. All of our permitting applications with Rhode Island, Massachusetts, the federal government, and local permits are available on Southcoast Wind's document page if anyone is interested in reviewing them. We can go to the next slide. I know this is a lot of information for a slide, so happy to provide this information to anyone who is interested, but this is a snapshot of upcoming public participation opportunities with different state and federal agencies based on when we start to make these filings. So as you'll see, the Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council, Rhode Island Energy Facilities Siting Board, and Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management all offer oral and written public comment opportunities to give comment on other portions of the project in Rhode Island state waters. Also opportunities with the EPA to comment on the activities in federal waters. All of these public comment opportunities are to come. We have been through quite a few given our mature permitting for the project, but we will be sure to let people know when there are specific dates around these opportunities. We'll post them on our website and we'll work with the town to get them on the town's website. So we just wanted to highlight these opportunities to give comment outside of this local process. This is my last slide. I just wanted to land on the project benefits as we move into talking about the host community agreement and the benefits that it could bring for Portsmouth. Just touching on, this is a major renewable energy project that is a major contributor to state, regional, and national climate goals. Climate change is here. It's damaging our communities. Offshore wind is a really important lever that we need to pull to be able to start decarbonizing our energy systems and to be reaching these carbon reduction goals set out by the state of Rhode Island and others. Our project will eliminate 4 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions when it's in operation. There are major carbon reduction savings. And we're seeing the impacts of climate change locally. Extreme weather events are happening more frequently. There's a snapshot of Park Avenue from just last week. Economic opportunity with any major energy development project. There is economic benefits from local jobs, local supply chain opportunities, making investments in blue economies with local STEM initiatives. And thinking about agreements like this one, where, you know, we're working with local communities, working with the state, forming agreements to provide economic benefits to hopefully address needs and carve out funds for things that the community thinks are important. And I'll hand it back to Lawrence to hit on grid reliability, as he's the transmission expert.
You've heard about Brayton. I again emphasize that this is a focal point of the entire New England area to maximize the use of that existing infrastructure where we can bring offshore wind in. Importantly, offshore wind operates at more than double the capacity factor of solar. We've seen a lot of solar. This is an opportunity to really bring more renewable energy to more people. Renewable energy, offshore at 50% capacity factor versus a typical solar plant around here of around 20%. And the mix together offers an opportunity to really bring in a more predictable energy source from the New England ISO operators that can bring a clean grid and a reliable grid. And this is the path to bring this energy forward. Regarding Portsmouth and the ability here tonight is to have Portsmouth participate with us to all lift this together and bring all the participants along with this project. And we appreciate the council's request to have us present. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Shore to give an overview of the HCA.
Sure, microphone.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, Alan Shore here. Town hired our firm, Adler, Pollock and Sheet, to help them out in this process. It's obviously a very kind of a unique area that they don't get into on an everyday basis. And in many cases, the town is, and of course it's in an interesting position. It's sort of following along with what's happening in this kind of energy space. And as the council president pointed out, this meeting really follows a logical process that began when Southcoast filed their application with the siting board back in 2022. So the town was identified as a preferred route for transmission cabling, and so I think the town, from a very early position, recognized that it's important to be involved in the process, as well as to put itself in the best position possible to to make sure that the town that received the greatest amount of benefit. Again, as the council president pointed out, not being in a position to have jurisdiction over the actual permitting and licensing means that it's important that the town be prepared for being able to be a participant in this if in fact the siting board process results in a permit and a license to the applicant, to the company. So with that said, we were engaged, we put together our team to come in and take a look at what's going on around the region. We kept an eye on some of the other agreements that were being worked out by other communities. And we could see that, and as anybody who's been following this history knows that there are other projects that are also going on in the region. There's a Vineyard Wind Project in Massachusetts. There's the Revolution Wind Project, of course, also in Rhode Island. The South Fork Wind Project in New York. So you can see the area is very busy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of activity. And that's obviously good if you're in the offshore wind business. But it's also good if you're in the home coast community world as well, because it means that other communities are also engaged in this process too, as well. So we're able to take a look at what's going on in other communities, make sure the town is getting the best and the best, best resources that it can get in relationship to what's going on. So we have some history with these agreements. These are not sort of brand new, creating these things out of a test tube or something. These agreements have been around a long time. You see these in any different form of businesses and commercial, construction activities in town. So we're familiar with the structure of these agreements, and they share a lot of things in common, as you'll see in this agreement. So we took a look at what was going on. We met with Southcoast and its team over the months of 2022 and into 2023. Again, just keeping track of what's going on, getting the latest and the greatest. And happy to say that I think we've reached a very favorable agreement for the town, especially when you compare it to some of the other projects that are in the region. I think one of the important things to point out for this project, as Lawrence and his team have pointed out as well, that this is a project that's not going to involve a lot of above ground electric infrastructure, substation, kind of work that you see in other projects in other offshore wind projects involving other host communities. These intermediate cablings that Lawrence described are going to be underground, not visible to the public. So we're talking about very underground, protected, almost invisible type of infrastructure. It's also going to be a relatively short area. We're talking about a couple of miles at most. So if you look at, in comparison to the other projects that are out there, the package that we put together for consideration by the council, we think is an excellent package. It puts the town in as good a position as possible in the event that that the company receives its licenses to go forward. If that happens, then it's important that the town be in a position to have its interests protected and have the benefit of these public benefits that are associated in the agreement. I can give an overview of the specific portions of the agreement if you think that would be helpful. We can also, I know the town manager would like to also give a just high-level overview of the structure of the payments that are contemplated. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I think just a brief high-level overview.
Sure. Okay, so the agreement is the agreement in its at a high level is really set up to lay a framework for how the town and the company are going to engage going forward. And fundamentally, I think the easiest way to look at this is the town, of course, owns rights of way in public roads. The company's preferred route through the EFSB application is to traverse these public roads. So this is a utility type of project, and the town is in a very familiar spot. It owns and controls its rights of way. And so when a company wants to use those rights of way, the town is in a position to give grant easements, grant rights of way, or grant real estate rights. And in exchange for those rights, of course, there are payments that are made to the town for the right to use those rights of way. That's the fundamental structure of the agreement. The agreement sets forth that the town has control over its property, that it has easement rights to grant for its public roads, and that it will monitor and work to make sure that any construction work is done in a workmanlike and safe manner. It coordinates any role that it has to be involved with regard to any permitting activities that are going on. And it puts the town in a position to be really just what it says, it's a host community. So the agreement sets forth that the town will be a cooperative host to make sure that it is not taking a position to oppose the project. That's a very, that's sort of the give and take here. So along with the cooperation, the town is to receive financial benefits and other public benefits that are identified specifically in the agreement. And I'll turn it over to the town manager to just give a high level overview of how the payments are structured.
Last page, I think it's exhibit A.
Okay, sure. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so the town has negotiated this host community agreement. As part of that agreement, we've negotiated payments in consideration of the obligations that are in the proposed agreement and the town's willingness to be a host community for the project and these onshore cables. The payments shall be allocated and committed to initiatives at the town's sole discretion. So the proposed agreement stipulates one, that Southcoast will pay a total of $23,224,673 for the two projects, phase 1 and phase 2. It's all one project. It's called they're the cables. They would go in the same duct bank. If you remember the slide that was up there, one side is paid project 1, one side of the duct bank would be project 2. $500,000 would be paid to the town within 30 days of the execution of this agreement, and then all the other payments are contingent upon the project itself. So if the project does not get approved, if they decide not to pursue the application for any reason, the project doesn't happen, then there would be no further payments, but the $500,000 would remain with the town. So at the start of construction for each project 1, project 2, the two sets of cables, the town would receive $250,000 to start of construction. Also, at the start of construction, the town would receive $3.25 million for project 1, the beginning of project 1, for a resiliency fund or public benefit project, again, at the sole discretion of the town. For each, the project 1, project 2, after the start of construction. So in years 1 through 10 would be the pilot agreement, which is what the public hearing is about. A pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. So in years 1 through 10, $250,000 would be paid to the town, and for each of those years, in each of the years of the contract, there is a 2.5% per year escalator built into the payment structure. In years 1 through 10, $125,000 represents the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes, and then the balance represents the host community agreement. At the end of year 10, so in the beginning of year 11, the pilot drops off and then it goes straight to a tangible tax. In years 11 through 21, the town would receive the $250,000 with the 2.5% escalator that is compounding every year. with a, so you would pay a tangible tax, Southcoast would pay a tangible tax, and that would be deprecated from the 250,000. So the remainder would be the host community payment. And then obviously the other side of that would be the tangible tax. In years 22 through 33 of the agreement, the payment drops from $250,000 to $125,000. And again, in the background, that has been compounding at 2.5% interest from the beginning of the project. And then $125,000, that $125,000 that has been escalated to 2.5% would be paid to the town. Portion of that would be the tangible tax, and then the remainder would be the HCA agreement. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. At this point, I'd like to ask if any counselors have any questions, comments on the HCA.
Thank you, Council President. Excuse me, a little hoarse. I just wanted again to reiterate what's already been said, which is what we are voting on tonight is not whether this project goes forward or not. That is ultimately up to the Energy Facility Siting Board. What we are voting on is whether the town receives any compensation at all when and if the project goes through. Mr. Rayner has been negotiating tirelessly to try to secure the best agreement for the town that he can. I appreciate his efforts. And I think in this case, this is what we are voting on. Whether the project goes through or not, we have no say over that. But we do have a say as to whether the town is compensated for the inconvenience of that construction going on. And that is what we're voting on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. I do want to just ask a question, just for clarification. Mr. Mott, if I could just get clarification on the total, there's two phases of the project. Each phase is the 1,200 megawatt conduit. So there's two cables. Each one is 600 megawatts approximately, right? So there's a total of, that's the total of 4 conduits. 2,400 megawatts is your total project, correct?
Correct. The total project is 2,400 megawatts. Each 1,200 requires 2 cables.
Okay, and based on the capacity of the lines and what's in our agreement that's presented to the town, because it says approximately 1,200 megawatts. So I just want to clarify for that, you know, the final 1,200 megawatts, total 2,500 megawatts is very close to what it would be. It wouldn't be more, but it would probably be a little bit less, if anything. Is that a fair statement?
Thank you for the question. 2 points on that. So
Yeah.
the reason 1,200 megawatts is specified is the regulator, ISO New England, that operates the grid, has a maximum of 1,200 megawatts. And we will work, as we've stated, to reach the most effective injection of energy into the grid. So we will be absolutely at 1,200 megawatts. That is the full design of the project. Importantly, we're not allowed to go over that. ISO New England will not allow, and it's been discussed for many years, that cap has remained solid. So that will be the number. So therefore, all incentives push us to 1,200. And then secondarily, the cable will be designed for 1,200, and you cannot, it only can carry so much, and changes in technology over the next few years will not change that. So it will be 1,200.
One last question, and again, this is, I think, just for my own clarification. I know tonight we're considering, this HCA, and it would, if approved, would allow for the easements to move forward. Those still need to be refined through the design process. But based on that, do you anticipate that the actual easement for the, for both phase 1 and phase 2 would be similar to what was in that diagram? I think it showed about a 6-foot trench. So an easement that if an easement for this conduit we're going to move forward, you're probably looking at about a 6 to 8 foot easement from the town for this utility, essentially like a utility easement. Is that
Correct. It would be a standard utility easement and it would be more likely 5 foot wide, smaller. Maybe during construction, we'll need a little more room.
sure?
But it's absolutely standard practice over the years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Would there be any further questions at this point from the council? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to allow the public to speak, but I do want to just also mention this is a public hearing. We only have the auditorium tonight until 10 p.m. So we may have to cut it off later on, but it is a public hearing, so I'm going to allow you to speak, just knowing that we do have a 10 o'clock cutoff. Okay. Yep, and just a reminder, name and address for the town clerk.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
President.
Okay.
Make sure the mic's closed.
Yeah,
That's fine.
let's
Good.
make sure. Let's,
Right in the microphone.
and actually, one other thing, because I just noticed that as this gentleman walked across, there's some cables in the front here, and there's very little staging area over to the right. So if you do want to speak tonight, please kind of come around and come down and line up behind the podium, and we'll allow you to speak. And just please be careful with the wire.
Sal Carseller, 63 Leach Road, and I'm gonna keep my questions strictly to the host community agreement and only that.
Okay.
And before I start, I'm gonna say, I took to reading the entire agreement as if the property in question were my own. So I don't want to voice an opinion about pro-wind, not pro-wind, I don't really care. The agreement is to benefit Portsmouth, and that's the citizens of Portsmouth. So the first thing I like to start with is I like to know, I went through the latest markup. I like to know the date of this current agreement that's posted on the website, when it became available, when it was given to Portsmouth. If we know, more or less, December, Christmas, perfect, okay. Has every council member here, I'm gonna direct this, if you don't mind, to all the council members, had the opportunity to see this agreement?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm gonna remind that I believe all councilors submitted an oath to uphold the laws of Portsmouth and Rhode Island, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, having participated on several charter review committees, I'm very well versed in Rhode Island cities and towns laws, because I've taken the time before. And one is called out in the recitals, calls out Title 44, Chapter 3, Section 910. Can somebody explain why that's in this agreement?
I'm going to defer to our solicitor.
And that title, by the way, is Title 44, Taxation, Chapter 3, Property Subject to Taxation, and 9.10 is a special provision for Portsmouth and Portsmouth only. I'd like to understand why that's in this agreement.
I think I can help there. I think it's in there because a portion of the payments that are associated with the host community payment structure are dedicated to paying basically an agreed upon tax, a tax for the property of the company that's going to be placed into the town's rights of ways. So because there's going to be property placed into the town in the regular situation where someone wants to build a project in place in town, the town would have the right to tax that property for the revenues associated with it. And the general laws specifically give the town the opportunity to negotiate out a fixed amount of what that tax payment would be over a period of 10 years. And that comes from the statute that you just cited there. And so it's important that we think it's an important provision in the agreement, because the town, we want the town and want everybody, who's reading the agreement to understand what the authority was of the town to fix the tax payments for the property of the company for that period of time. And that is the relevant authority that gives the town the payment in lieu of tax authority. So that's why it's there. It's there to show anybody who's reading where the town's authority is derived from.
Would you say that Title 44, Chapter 3, 9.10, on its face, was designed to limit the authority to 10 years?
I think that, yeah, of course, it said not for a period not to exceed 10 years.
Okay, so why are we signing? Do you feel as counselors, according to your oath, that you have within jurisdiction to sign this agreement for 33 years? You're making an enormous decision to sign an agreement and in debt Portsmouth for 33 years when you only have authority to go for 10. I don't look for explanations. I'm just warning you that taking the vote could possibly. Now, I know we can play language, but let's be clear. The reason why this taxation is in the Rhode Island laws for Portsmouth is to protect the town of Portsmouth, to make sure that a town council does not vote on something that can indebt this town for more than 10 years, whether you like that or not. By the way, the actual Section 9 is 20 years. Somebody, I don't know the reason why, I didn't get a chance to dig in, had the wherewithal in Portsmouth to add the Portsmouth, to restrict the Portsmouth to 10 years. Okay? And I'm gonna make special note to the president of the town council, because your name is the only name on the back signature page. So you are signing on behalf of all of the representatives. So that's just on that section. On page 3.
If I may answer that.
Okay.
It's fine. If you look at 44-3-9, you'll see lots of subsections, .1, .2, .3, etc. Many municipalities across Rhode Island have pilot authority. And you are correct that 9.10 provides the capacity. So the town of Portsmouth has taxation authority on a lot of things. Primarily, we're all familiar with standard property tax. There's no limit on the number of years on the standard property tax. However, a special arrangement like a pilot, short of other enabling, and that legislation is limited to 10 years. If you look at section 6.9 of the HCA, the pilot portion of the payments to the town are for 10 years. Any other payment outside of that is property tax. So that benefits Portsmouth residents in the sense that any new, like any construction, any new addition to the tax levy, it impacts everybody. The pilot does not. So it's beneficial to the builder because they have some certainty and knowability about property tax over a certain period of time. After which, whatever the levy is what we've agreed to, and it would be treated as a property tax. So the limitation of the law that you cite to, and the only reason I feel like responding, we have perfectly capable counsel here, is you've called into question the oath I took to follow the law. We are following the law. Section 9.10 of Title 44, Chapter 3 provides for the town to have pilot authority to enter into a pilot following a public hearing for 10 years. We're not entering into a pilot for longer than that.
Hey, but you're entering into the agreement for 33 years, so why don't you keep the pilot agreement separate? And sign only the pilot agreement, because that's all you're.
Because it's all a package. We don't want to have to separately
I
negotiate.
understand, I'm not gonna split hairs. I understand how clever it was to pull this off. And the 10-year was not picked out of that. If they
No, the 10 years was
The
picked
10
out
year
of statute.
out of the statute could allow us to make a promise to Southcoast for 33 years. But the reality is, we're not supposed to be making promises for 33 years. We're only supposed to be promising for 10.
I feel you are free to read your contract however you choose. I read it as Southcoast making a promise to Portsmouth for 33 years.
If it were my contract, I would have two separate contracts here, because you're not authorized to sign the other side of this contract. So the other question I have, it was just a question at this point. Section page 3, 1.3, it says, in addition, the siting boards may analyze alternative overland routes. Can somebody please explain that? What do we mean, analyze alternative overland routes? In the back of this is a map, and it shows 2 routes. But today, Lawrence just presented 3 routes. So the reality is, this is the contract I'm holding in my hand. The map Lawrence presented and the map in the contract don't match. And on top of that, it says alternative routes. Why is that in here? What does that mean? Siting boards may analyze alternative routes. We've been hearing about only 2 routes all along.
Well, I think that this provision, what we're locking into with the HCA is Exhibit A, which is the 2 route, potential for the 2 routes. If there's an additional route, then that would have to be renegotiated. And at this point, and I don't want to speak out of context here for the Energy Facility Siting Board, but they have the authority, the information's been presented to the EFSB. They could determine that maybe these aren't the feasible routes, and they ask them to evaluate a different route. If that's the case, then we're back renegotiating something that's outside of Exhibit A.
Okay.
Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think it is. It's really, it's a reservation of rights, because this is, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're just following the logical process that is in the lead of the applicant. That would be Southcoast Wind. They filed an application, they've identified their preferred routes, and that's what's in the Exhibit A, the diagram. But, we don't have a crystal ball. Nobody can predict, what the siting board is going to ultimately decide. So we wanted to make sure that there was a reservation of rights. In other words, if it turns out that the siting board approves a different route, as the council president said, we're back at the table. That's the whole point of that.
Okay. And then we talk about other such locations in section 2.1. So it just, to me, it's sort of, we've already picked, we've been listening and looking at maps for a while now. And now all of a sudden we're saying, well, maybe it won't be any of those. And then here's the thing though, in section 5.1, it says that once you sign this, the town agrees not to oppose. So once this is signed, it doesn't matter. We agree not to oppose. They could decide to put the lines overhead. I don't know. Like I'm saying, I'm just looking at this like if it was my land, I'd be concerned. Page B, 6.1. You already brought this up and I couldn't agree. Approximately 1,200 megawatt phase. What do you mean approximately? Put a minimum and a max in the contract. What does approximately mean? Enough said. You were president, it was a concern for you as well.
But I think the response was that it can't be more than 1,200.
Then say that. Don't say approximately.
Well, I don't, okay, but
I'm just saying, I mean, it's a contract. We should say what the min and the max is, or not to be more than.
that might be a clarification, a maximum of 1,200.
Then section 11.2. They talk about you know, damages, causes of damages. I'm just gonna warn here that Block Island had damages to the power line to the tune of $31 million to rebury it. The company that put the power line in didn't do anything. The electric company wound up having to eat that cost, get that cable reburied. They quoted that number, and then when asked, who pays for it? The ratepayers. Okay? And we agree to that. We're agreeing, hey, if bad things happen, free pass. There's a whole new section, 14.3. It's not just like a couple sentences fixed. To me, it seems Portsmouth be giving up all the rights to raise any objections. And this one really worries me. Section 15.1, I'll end with this one. Portsmouth agrees that if you sign this and you violated any other laws or provisions unknowingly, the contents of this signed agreement prevails. I would take that out. Because just the example I gave you about the state law, we can dispute here, is the contract valid or not? But the reality is the state law is pretty clear. It's trying to limit the town council's power to 10 years. The contract's for 33. Let's be real. And my point is, let's say this goes, well, basically, we couldn't even go, if somebody wanted to sue us because of that, you, in here, it basically says, you're letting them off the hook scot-free. This contract prevails.
Yeah. I think, you know, I don't think that's what it's saying. I think the contract, it says right on its face that it's a Rhode Island, it's a Rhode Island contract. That is, it's an agreement that's entered into in Rhode Island. That's the jurisdiction where we are. We're all operating. We're all engaged. That's all it's intended to do. It's describing that in the event that there's a dispute, the laws of the state of Rhode Island will be the laws that will be applied to resolve a dispute, to resolve any disagreement.
That's not what it says. It says in the event of a conflict with the terms of any administrative order or otherwise, the terms of this agreement shall prevail.
In the event there are conflicts of laws, where there's a confusion about which state's laws, which jurisdiction laws, when the word conflicts of laws is talked about, there's talking about laws of other jurisdictions. In this case, it's the law of Rhode Island that's going to be applied. And if there's any ambiguity about what were the parties intending, it's the terms of the agreement that are going to control, that are going to be used to educate a judge, say, and what did the company and what did the town mean when they said certain words? The words of this contract are going to be very important to resolve any disputes. That's the essence of the language that you're referring to.
My only point to come here was to just point out, like, if this was my property and I had an attorney, I'd put the brakes on and be asking to be certain of these points. And the one that bothers me the most, I'll just conclude here, I've already said it, is the fact that the intent of the Rhode Island, that chapter, Title 44, is to limit the power of this council to 10 years, the decisions you make. And the decision you make for 33 years, well, let me ask, I'm gonna ask, I don't know the answer to this. Do we have any counselor that served for 20 years? We have some that served for 10, probably, right?
16.
Yeah, how many?
16.
16, that's what I figured. Well, I don't even think we had any for 20. So just think about that the contract you're about to sign will have ramifications long beyond any counselor has ever stuck around. That's all, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cartel, before you leave, were you satisfied with that answer? I raised the question because, as you were told, we received this document around Christmas, but it didn't have all the red writing on it. That just came out over the weekend.
Well, I asked that, that's
What-
what I asked.
What has changed? Why do we just insert this now? I don't have the answer for that. I don't understand his answer. I hope somebody else did.
Interesting, Mr. Gleason, so you're saying that you actually haven't had a chance to review this document?
I read it over the weekend, but
Okay.
I didn't have this document, the red line document on Christmas.
Point taken.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like everyone else, I received this contract around Christmas. I don't remember the exact date. And I provided some of my thoughts on it to the administration. Some of my comments were incorporated. They were mostly simple things. For example, the capitalized term host community was not defined in the contract. Usually if there's capitalized terms, it means it's a defined term, so I looked for a definition. I asked about it because in case host community was something defined in some statute, I wanted to know what obligations might be coming out of the fact that it's using that term here. And I was told, no, we can clarify that. So one of the red lines you'll see in the document is in the very first line where town of Portsmouth, parentheses, Portsmouth or town, and now added host community. So host community just means Portsmouth. Several of the red lines in here are of that caliber of, how about we just define the term that we're using? Simple stuff. On behalf of the entire legal profession dating back probably to, I'd say, the 1500s or so, I'm sorry. It looks like English. It's not. It's contract language. I just want to address the last comment raised by Mr. Purceller about consent to jurisdiction and about the agreement being governed and construed as a Rhode Island contract. If this contract ever ends up in a court of law in some lawsuit, the judge is going to want to know what the words mean. And many of these words are terms of art, and they may have a slightly different meaning in Delaware versus New York versus Nebraska versus Rhode Island. We want Rhode Island law because we have much cheaper access to Rhode Island lawyers if we need them. And so it's important that we give guidance to the court. When you hear the phrase boilerplate, this is boilerplate. This agreement shall be governed and construed. Construed means construction. Construed means how a contract is read and understood. Construed as a Rhode Island contract, exclusive of its conflict of law rules. That's another legalese turn of phrase that means doesn't matter if that conflicts with New York law or if we have rules about how to apply different states' laws. No, we are reading by contract. This will be governed. This will be interpreted as how this contract would be read under Rhode Island law. We want that. Helps us. I don't know where Southcoast Wind's lawyers are. Let them hire Rhode Island lawyers. There's language here that says any lawsuit would be brought in Rhode Island courts. Again, we want that. We don't want some company hailing us into court or trying to in Delaware or wherever. They got to sue us here. We also have to sue them here. That's fine. That last new red language you saw, the consent to jurisdiction. What was in the contract before just said, we agree to file here. But then they can go complain about it and try to say, well, we're not really subject to Rhode Island law. The new text helps Portsmouth. because it makes them consent to the jurisdiction of the Rhode Island courts. Again, this is really boring stuff. This is boilerplate. It's important because we want to be in Rhode Island court if anything should ever happen. This language helps Portsmouth. It does not hurt Portsmouth. They've waived the right, if they sign this, if we approve it, they waive the right to object that they don't think Rhode Island courts have jurisdiction over them. So I understand that if you're not familiar with these types of turns of phrase in a legal contract, that these are foreign looking terms, and interpreting it as though it's just ordinary English seems odd and maybe doesn't seem right. But I can assure you, as a lawyer practicing now 24 years, God, I'm getting old. This helps Portsmouth and it's appropriate.
Okay, we are gonna continue to move on. I do ask folks, to be as brief and concise with your comments as possible. We appreciate that.
Can you hear me? It's a little high for me.
If you can-
I don't want to.
You won't break it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So much.
Okay.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm Martha Cozier, 8 Miller Street. And I am basically here because I noticed going back to November 2nd that the partnership with Southwind had changed and Shell had pulled out. And I just didn't know if everybody was aware of that and paid a big penalty. And it seems to me, based upon the research that I've done, that the partner with the biggest stick is not Southwind, it's Ocean Winds. And Ocean Winds, their parent company is E, D as in dog, P as in, well, the People's Republic of China. And there are 8 board members of the parent company of Ocean Wind, and all but one are from Singapore, China, and have actually the government of Singapore and the president of China a couple of days ago joined together for a press conference where they asserted that Singapore is not an ally of the United States of America and will not engage in any military cooperation with the United States of America. Now, why do I mention this? It's very important, it's very significant. As I said, the primary partner in this endeavor doesn't really seem to be Southwind, it seems to be Ocean Wind. And their board members, and if one of you will give me an email address at the end of the meeting, I'd be happy to send you every bit of the documentation. It's all from press releases, Reuters. It's all documented in their own words. Anyway, I just didn't know whether the people of Rhode Island and Massachusetts felt comfortable with the notion that the primary partner in this endeavor would be an entity that is controlled by the People's Republic of China through a bank by the name of Haitong, H-A-I-T-O-N-G, Haitong International, and a bank that was originally from Portugal, which of course parts of China were taken over by the Portuguese centuries ago. And since a lot has been in the news recently about certain billionaire Chinese investors and Chinese entities buying up hundreds of thousands of acres of American farmland, forests, water supplies for the, off the Colorado River and places like that, whether we all felt comfortable with the notion of having our power grid in the hands of people who essentially answer to the People's Republic of China. I know I don't feel comfortable, particularly, and if I may share a little of my background as to why I'm so terrified by the notion of this partnership that you're considering. For approximately 10 years, I worked at the United States Naval War College. I was the social media manager, researcher, and content creator for every chief of naval operations since Admiral Mike Mullen, right up to the current CNO, first woman, Lisa Franchetti. Every single thing that I wrote was read not just by America's friends, but by America's foes. In particular, I was always wary of the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, and people like that. So I made sure that all of my research was very particular, very accurate. Because, I mean, I actually could have started something really nasty if I got it wrong, you know what I mean? So I've spent a lot of time very carefully looking into the background of South Wind and Ocean Wind. And I'm very alarmed by what I'm seeing. Now, I am not against renewable energy at all. My nephew is the CEO of one of the biggest renewable energy firms in the United States. And it's a good thing. I'm very concerned about who owns it. And when you're talking about Aquidneck Island, you're talking about all of the tenant commands at Naval Station Newport, including the Naval War College, okay, where we play our word games, all right? The War College, that's where the Surface Warfare Officers School training is located, all the schools for the United States Navy. And then we're looking at Newark, which is the think tank, if you will, the skunk works for all of the sonar systems for nuclear submarines. And now Governor Raimondo has made sure that NOAA, which comes under the Commerce Department, is going to be building a new facility there. And what really concerns me is the easy access off Burma Road and across the island, all the way to Melville, all the way to the War College, where some of the most top secret stuff that's going on in the United States of America takes place. And yet South Winds, their primary partner is Ocean Winds. And that truly, truly concerns me. And another thing that concerned me from an economic development perspective, when I looked up South Winds, you know, you go to a website and it gives the address of their offices, their headquarters. And the address was 99 South Main Street in Fall River. Does anybody else know who owns that building? His name is James Karam of First Bristol. And he's the guy who wants to partner with Marshall Properties to develop Weaver's Cove. And he's also partnering to develop the Middletown Center on land that Middletown is owned. So basically, if he gets his way, he's going to control everything along Burma Road from Melville to the Naval War College. So I think that's very important food for thought. And maybe you need to say, I need a little more time to discuss this and delve into it. Because one thing that popped up very recently was that the town of Falmouth, very similar to us, we've got the Navy, the Naval War College, Newark, all of that. Well, they've got Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And they were so displeased with what they quote, and you can find this online in the news. They were so displeased, the town council of Falmouth, with the lack, their words, not mine, the lack of transparency by South Winds, that they said, we're not going to allow you access to the land. We're not going to do it. And do you know what South Winds said? And it's actually in writing. They said, we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. So please, I would ask of you, take this in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. If I may, just a couple of quick clarifications. First of all, back to the previous speaker discussing Block Island and the trenching and the quote that the utilities had to pay and then that was passed on to the ratepayer. I just want to be very clear that it was the utility that made that contract. They installed that line initially, so therefore you're right. They did end up having to pay for the failure that was under their contracting and their planning. So I just want to make the differentiation. In our case, it would be our contracting, our responsibility. We would have to take on any of those costs. They would not be passed on to utility ratepayers of the town. To the point that the previous speaker, please, I'd be glad to give you my email also. I would be very pleased in your research to understand and appreciate your diligence.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, well, you represent Southwinds. I'm pretty sure you know it. I'm going to share it with the town council.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just made it, no problem. Just was asking. I specifically work at Southcoast Wind. I am an employee of Ocean Winds. Ocean Winds, you're correct, is a joint venture between a French utility called Engie or Engie, the French pronunciation. It's a very large French utility, very similar to another name you may have heard of, Electricité de France, EDF. And then the other partner, as you correctly say, is EDP, which is a very large conglomerate, which, as you've noticed, started in Portugal. They have a very large presence in Houston. They've been in the energy business here in the United States for some 20 plus years. And they have also some presence here in New England. I'd also note that Engie has a strong presence here in New England on a lot of work around Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And that, no, again, what I'm trying to do is clarify for this group in these large conglomerations that we work with, the effort that we conduct is a 50% partnership with Southcoast Wind. You highlighted is Ocean Winds. Their headquarters are in Madrid. They are a European entity. I then want to correct the other one, which is Shell, is very much a full and wholesome partner in Southcoast Wind.
Why did they announce on November 2nd that they?
Let's gladly get to that. So I want to be clear, Southcoast Wind is the other 50% shareholder in, pardon me, Shell is the 50% shareholder in Southcoast Wind. So it's very normal. We are Southcoast Wind. We are a project entity, 50% Ocean Winds, 50% Shell. The point that you state is correct, but I'd like to just clarify. Southcoast Wind was the one that did terminate its contracts with on the power purchase agreements that was stated in a variety of publications. And the partnership remains whole, and that's why we went forward in a very public process. We worked through with utilities and the state government, and now we are preparing with an intent to prepare a response to the upcoming bids to, in effect, proceed again with those contracts. And we'd be glad to clarify more on any of those points.
Okay, actually, I want to clarify. This is a public hearing, and I will give, actually, I should give you the opportunity to respond to questions, or we as a council should respond to questions if we can at the time. Because what I don't want to happen is what just happened, where you were trying to respond and we had although Ms. Cozier, you were at the podium, you stepped away from the podium and you were shouting from the audience, and then stuff gets lost. Well, talking loudly from the audience gets lost in translation. It doesn't get recorded by the town clerk. So really, from the process, all the discussion should come from the podium. So my apologies for maybe not allowing you to respond quicker. But moving forward, that's the process. Some folks are feeling compelled to shout out from the audience. Please do not do that. It's very disruptive and it is a little disrespectful to the folks that are sitting up here trying to listen, and we're hearing your comments. So please, keep that to, I just don't want to hear the comments up front. And it does, you're gonna do it?
Should hear the comments.
No, if you want to speak, you can come up. You're not gonna shout.
Person is shouting.
The person that's shouting? All right.
It's a public hearing. Try to control the game, we all agree.
This is a public hearing, and I'm gonna ask you, if you're gonna speak, to come to the podium. There is gonna be some organization here. We're not gonna have shouting out from the audience. It's not how it works.
Hi. My name's Camille Nixon. I live at 70 Bradford Street, but I'm in Warren, and I'll tell you why I'm here. I called Rhode Island Energy and asked them if we could get our energy from wind, which is what we were doing with National Grid before. And I guess I don't know where it was coming from, but they said that with this new project that's coming, that might be a possibility. And we really want to do that. And I really commend you for going ahead with this, that you're going to be a beacon for this Northeast, and you should really be. I thank you for going through all of this stuff you have to go through to get this passed, because it's really, I'm a grandmother. We need to address this climate change. It's already late. It's been 2 years since this has been going forward. We're supposed to be at, a level in 2030, and we're not there. We're not going to be there unless we do something now. There's no more postponing this. I understand that people are nervous about this company, but they're assuring us, and this man just said that the utilities are going to be underground, so there's no reason to think that it's going to be something that we're going to see. The other thing I'm going to say is that we live on the water in Warren, and we see the windmill across the Warren River over to Warwick. And it is a beautiful thing. And every time I see it, I'm thankful that we're thinking about the future. So I just wanted to say thank you, and please let this happen.
Hi, I'm a commercial fisherman. My name is Keith Uzzle. I'm from Wareham, Massachusetts. I fish out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. I came here today because I wanted to speak about how the effects of these turbines are affecting our marine life.
Okay, yeah. The public hearing is really on the HCA, right? Not on the turbines and the stuff offshore. It's outside of our jurisdiction. Your comments would be better suited for those agencies that have jurisdiction, such as the Coastal Resource Management Council, EFSB. Tonight, we're here to discuss the host community agreement, not the turbines offshore.
I agree, but every time one of these things gets plugged in, it's taken away from fishing jobs. You're getting temporary union jobs on land and some out at sea, but you're taking away permanent commercial fishing jobs. And I get that, these cables are being buried and they're going into the town of Portsmouth. But I'm sorry.
No, I apologize, but unfortunately,
I get what you mean.
we
It's
do not
not
have
the place
we do not have the jurisdiction to approve or deny the turbines or any of that. What we're tasked with from the EFSB, or would be tasked with, is an advisory opinion on the things that the town of Portsmouth has authority over. The things that the town of Portsmouth has authority over are work within our right of way, work within our public right of way. That would be our streets. A lot of this project is not on the town of Portsmouth land. Boyd's Lane and a portion of Anthony Road are controlled by the state DOT. So really, the town of Portsmouth has about 2,000 feet of Anthony Road that we would be entering into potentially an easement.
Getting $23 million for 2,000.
That's what our control is. Our control is within the town. We only have authority over the town land. We don't have control.
Near the end, they're where they plug into. So you have the right to say no to,
We're not where they plug into. We are not where they plug into.
so if you say no, where are they gonna go next?
Here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. The EFSB is going to be the final authority that issues or denies this project. And we've said this before, even if the town of Portsmouth
Yeah, I asked that before.
said if the town says no, we're opposed to it, it could still happen and they could still put the conduits in and across the town of Portsmouth. That can still happen. They are the final authority. All we're doing is issuing an advisory opinion to the
What do
EFSB.
you guys get the bribe money from that? That's what it is.
Sir, I thank you for your comments.
People have opinions.
You're entitled to your opinion. And I would like you to just keep your opinion on the host community agreement. And if you think it's whatever you just used for a term, thank you for your comments.
My name is Corey Wheeler Forrest, 587 Boyd's Lane, fourth generation Portsmouth resident. My family has been harvesting local seafood here since the 1800s. I'm a fish dealer and have been a commercial fisherman out of Secana Point for nearly 30 years. The meeting here tonight is specifically regarding a host community agreement that will provide the cheapest and easiest route for the offshore wind developer to deliver electricity to and for Massachusetts. However, the decision you make tonight is not just about Portsmouth. And Southcoast Wind, with its 147 turbines and up to 5 offshore substations, is not the only developer. The cumulative impacts and mounting costs on our communities, natural environment, cultural resources, and fisheries of thousands of offshore wind turbines up and down our eastern seaboard must carefully be regarded and considered. On February 24th, 2012, Governor Chafee, Senators Reid and Whitehouse, and Congressman Cicilline gathered at Save the Bay to celebrate the removal of Cox's Ledge, a critical fishing area, from consideration for development in the wind energy area, calling it a victory for fishermen. They called it an extensive stakeholder process, and it ensured that future offshore wind turbines are appropriately sited with minimal impact on the environment, fishermen, and boaters. Reid said this will help protect the livelihoods of Rhode Island fishermen. Whitehouse said, "I'm glad the concerns of the Rhode Island fishing industry were taken into account. Doing so will protect our environment and existing coastal industries." 12 years later, they were building on Cox's Ledge with zero consideration for who and what they claimed to protect. Our appointed Coastal Resources Management Council, CRMC, claims to lead the nation in its unique approach to offshore wind review with the careful assessments of a fisheries advisory board. Late last summer, the entire Fishermen's Advisory Board resigned in protest of what they charge as a process that unfairly favors developers, ignores the board's concerns, and downplays the negative impacts on fish stocks and marine habitat. In a Providence Journal article from last July, a CRMC board member and state engineer accused Southcoast Wind of lying to agencies, and that misleading statement are part of a larger pattern with the company. The article also states that council staff repeatedly urged them to look at an overland route for the cable to avoid the Secana River, an essential fish habitat classified by the New England Fishery Management Council. NOAA, in its comments to BOEM on Southcoast Wind Project, also expressed their preferred land-based alternative to avoid the Secana River to reduce the impact on aquatic resources and designated habitat areas of particular concern for juvenile cod. Last month, the CRMC approved Southcoast Secana River transmission line. So far, the CRMC has approved every offshore wind project that's come before them. Rhode Island is the ocean state for a reason, and fishing has always been a fundamental part of coastal communities and the backbone of our nation's food security and supply. The aggressive plan to cover our earth and oceans with wind turbines and its negative environmental impact far exceeds any benefit. We must protect our open wild spaces. Our sea is not for sale. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make a correction. CRMC last month said they would consent to the federal portion. Please, the CRMC regarding the Secundit River will be in the future. We published the schedule previously on our presentation. We'll notify you so you can go and stand in front of CRMC and discuss your concerns.
And really quickly, one other thing, the energy from the project is going to be delivered to New England, not Massachusetts. We share a regional electrical grid with all 6 New England states. And Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts are working together to procure offshore wind by January 31st. So Rhode Island customers should be able to benefit from this project as well.
Kelsey, could I just ask you a question? Currently, and I don't know if Florence mentioned it, are we getting our electricity, where are we getting our electricity from right now? Where does the electricity to Aquidneck Island come from?
The feed in IS New England is 2 points. A, the mix is natural gas, nuclear, hydro, all those things that come. It's very similar from whether you're in Fall River or here or this region. And then your actual electrons come both from the 115 kV line that's not far from where we are, coming in from Pottersville and Brayton Point, right around the Somerset area. And then you also get it obviously in on the southern portion of Aquidneck.
So portion of the electricity that's coming onto Aquidneck Island is coming across the Secundit River, correct? Through Tiverton, Fall River, Somerset.
But if I may, a major amount.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because there have been comments that we do not receive any electricity from Massachusetts. This is only going to provide electricity to Massachusetts, and it was my understanding that it's a New England grid, and when you connect into the grid, the distribution is the grid does not identify state boundaries, and so we are currently getting our electricity. Portions of us are getting our electricity from Massachusetts. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to comment that having worked at Brayton Point at one point in my career, that basically the electricity is tied into your contracts. So if we don't have a contract with, Rhode Island Energy don't have a contract with Southcoast Wind, then in theory, there may be electrons coming over from Massachusetts, but nobody in Rhode Island is getting the benefit of them. We're not paying for them. We're buying them from another utility. And some of your electricity might be coming from the roof, my roof up top solar installation. You know, I'm not against the renewable energy. It's just how this whole project, this whole concept doesn't make sense. Thank you.
My name is Katie Egan, 08 Chippewa Road, Prudence Island. I am the owner and operator of a 35-foot commercial fishing vessel, Shellback. My home port is Potter's Cove on Prudence. I'm a second generation, lifelong, year-round commercial fisherman on Narragansett Bay, concentrating my efforts in the East Passage and Mount Hope Bay. Throughout the year, I've trapped whelks and fish and dive for callhouse. I am currently serving on the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Council, chair of the Shellfish Advisory Panel, and I'm on the Portsmouth Harbor Commission. As a Portsmouth resident, I asked the town council not to agree to or sign the host community agreement. The agreement states that in the recital, town protect the best interests of its residents, businesses, and corporate organizations at all times to ensure that the project is constructed, operated, and maintained in a safe and efficient and beneficial manner, unquote. In fact, it has the potential for the opposite. After tonight, Southcoast will be one step closer to critically impacting my business. Mount Hope Bay is a vital spawning area for channel whelk, one of the last remaining lucrative fisheries in the Upper Bay. My business relies on a productive and healthy ecosystem, and 50% of my traps are north of Mount Hope Bridge to the Massachusetts state line. Southcoast plans to plow a trench across the bay over 2 years during spawning season. The effects will be felt for years, because not only will juveniles not survive, the spawning stock mortality will be catastrophic. Channel Bluff is not the only fishery dependent on an undisrupted substrate. There is a vibrant fall mantis shrimp fishery sustaining our inshore otter trawl fleet. Mantis shrimp command the highest price per pound of any harvested species in the state of Rhode Island. They live most of their lives in tunnels under the seafloor until the fall, when fishermen are able to harvest them. During the height of the season, there are over 30 small-scale, independently owned commercial fishing boats in Mammal Bay using a variety of gear types for 24 hours a day. They're all working with one another to avoid conflict. This cable will upend this cooperation. The effects of climate change are the #1 problem facing the commercial fishing industry. We are perpetually adapting to warming water and species reaction to it. If there's anyone that wants to slow this trend, it's the commercial fishing fleet at large. But plowing a trench through spawning areas and disrupting migratory patterns will not help us reach this goal. Unfortunately, because this project is fast-tracked through the EPA, no studies have been done to help us find a more effective alternative. By voting yes on the HCA tonight, you're forfeiting every right to comment on the project locally, at the state level, or federally, and carte blanche for Southcoast to construct and expand without limits. You are abandoning all protection of the people and potentially violating the harbor management plan that you all approved. No town in Massachusetts would agree to these terms, so why should we? By delegating all authority to a private entity, counselors, you're abandoning all of your obligations to the people that have elected you, which is inconsistent with your duties. Thank you.
Abigail Kearney Brown, I am here tonight representing two entities. One is the Harbor Commission of the Town of Portsmouth, of which I'm the chair. Also, I am head of the Portsmouth Rights of Way. I'm here because the Harbor Commission feels very strongly about you not signing this contract tonight. We feel that all the industry that we have in Portsmouth is all about boating, it's all about fishing, and it's all about the water. I don't see how having this trench dug down, well, it's not me, the Harbor Commission does not see having the trench dug down the Secundit River Bay during any part of the season that could affect our boaters, affect our fishing vessels. It is not going to help our town. It is not going to benefit us, and it certainly is not going to help. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pete Hewitt, live at Wendy Drive, Bristol, Rhode Island. One note, the slide you had up there of the flooding at Park Street, I think if you go back 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you'll find that that area is flooding often. Which kind of brings me to my point that all of you who believe that climate change and the earth is about to implode because of climate change, it's a hoax. I have a couple of comments, questions I would ask of Southcoast. I understand that Southcoast previously was Mayflower, the Mayflower Enterprise. Two, I understand when you cancel your power purchase agreement, you had to pay a fine. I'd be interested in knowing how much of a fine you paid and where did the money come from. Three, I'm going to ask you a question, asking for an honest answer. Would Southcoast be involved in developing this project were it not for the heavy subsidies by the federal and state taxpayers to subsidize the operation? And I guess that's, oh, lastly, and for everybody's information, I'm a member at Montauk Country Club. And one of the options for bringing the cables across at Quinnipiac Island was to go through Montauk Country Club. By a vote of the membership, the easement was disapproved. 185, 154. And my understanding from the briefing that Lance gave the membership over at Montauk, the cables were to be buried 40 to 50 feet under the parking lot and under the several holes. But I heard tonight that the the easement coming across Aquidneck Island and the town or non-town owned property will be going down 6 feet. So I'm just wondering if that is accurate, predicated upon the 40 or 50-foot depth going across Montauk Country Club. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. I'll go ahead and stand up. I will address the first two. So yes, the name of the company used to be Mayflower Wind. We changed the name in 2022 to Southcoast Wind to better align with the communities that we're working in. We did terminate our power purchase agreements in Massachusetts, as Lawrence mentioned, and paid a $60 million fine for that termination, which is now done. Lawrence?
Tax subsidies are used in all kinds of industries. They're written into permanent law for the last 40, 50 years for oil and gas exploration. And the renewable energy industry across all hydro, solar, wind, onshore wind, all have certain incentives to get them on the ground. As you notice, the production tax credit and the investment tax credit also have sunset mechanisms. As industries gain foothold and lessen their costs, they can then lose those opportunities. The business is operational to construct and operate energy facilities. That's the expertise that these companies bring forward. And just like, as I mentioned, all businesses, these early subsidies get you going. They are not the sole reason for the company being in here. I assure you that the profit margins are less than typical businesses. And I would also highlight the significant risk and money you have to spend before you have everything, if we may, all together. Your next question is on Montauk is correct. We've been engaged with Montauk for a while to communicate and work with the membership. The various entities within Montauk continue to process through their bylaws, and you're correct on a vote that was held. And that is, we wish them well in that perspective, and we will continue to engage a variety of routes as we've highlighted here on Aquidneck. And then your last item is correct. The coastal area on the bottom of Boyd's Lane will use a horizontal directional drilling, which will bring it some 30, 40 feet under there. And then we would work, if we were at Montauk, to go from the parking area in front of the clubhouse, and it would traject down, and it would end up being a good 60, 80 feet under the rail tracks and down through there. And then the rest of the trenching as outlined would be in that 6-foot depth. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me just ask for clarification. So your answer to my question about whether or not Southcoast would still be engaged as a developer on these offshore wind projects, not without the federal state taxpayer subsidies, you would still be proceeding, because that would not be an incentive for you to cease and desist. If you were denied those subsidies, you would continue to proceed.
Sorry, can we work with the HCA here?
Yeah, we can't comment for sponsor companies, but that's not the sole reason for us pursuing the project. It's a benefit.
Let's move on, and let's, yes, try to refocus and keep comments to the HCA. We have been getting off track. Yeah, we've been getting off track with impacts that are outside of the town's jurisdiction. So if we could keep focus on what the town has control over, I would appreciate it. Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. My first question is regarding the decommissioning of a system. Should Southcoast Wind end its business with us? The issue is really with Vineyard Wind, which was in the news yesterday morning, that they had admitted that without the federal government waiving the decommissioning costs, they wouldn't be able to be in this business. So they are located, as previously mentioned, about 15 miles south of the Vineyard, Martha's Vineyard. So it's a relevant issue. It's in the same area. So my question is, does Southcoast Wind intend to negotiate the waiver of the decommissioning escrow account?
Yes.
I don't have direct input on that at this moment. We, as you know, are much less mature from Vineyard Wind on their process. We have the federal BOEM requirements and we will be following forward, and we will keep in full communication.
Okay, I await that answer should it develop. But the point would be obvious, and that is the town would be set, or somebody else besides Southcoast Wind with decommissioning the system, if any of it is required. I think in the HCA, it says that there isn't going to be any requirements. They'll just stop business and leave the cables in the ground. But I think that needs to be further investigated. Number 2 question. How do we negotiate, how the council and government in the town of Portsmouth negotiate this agreement with Southcoast Wind?
Turn that over to our negotiating team.
Well, I should just point out, thank you for the questions, but the first question on the decommissioning, I think I just want to clarify that the agreement references that the decommissioning of the project is part of the permitting and licensing process. In other words, the EFSD, the siting board, with this review of the project, is going to set the conditions that will guide the company in terms of the process that they use. That's not part of it. That's never been part of an HCA. It was never. We don't get into that detail here. That's a siting board review. They'll be identifying that the application for the siting board, and I think we referenced it, is that it just might be the case that, 20, 30 years from now, it may be the safest and the most environmentally beneficial thing to just leave the cables in the ground. No decisions are made. That's just something for the future to consider. But that's all this agreement is in reference to with the decommissioning. And then sorry, with the other question had to do with, oh yeah, the process. Okay. I mean, it's a contract negotiation process. So we have our team, that is the town manager, the town solicitor, myself, the staff of the town, the finance department, the tax department, the planning, offices, the DPW director, the whole town, basically your town and your staff in your town were available to us to answer questions and help guide us and give us input. Southcoast Wind has their legal team. They have a negotiating team that they put together. And just like in any negotiation, there's just a lot of dialogue and then back and forth about proposals and ideas, and just the way negotiations that take place, no different than in any other context. It's just the back and forth of the legal and contract negotiation process.
Thank you, Mr. Shore. Back when this subject first came to town, we had repeated promises from members of council that this would be developed, this agreement would be developed. Although I don't know that we had an HCA in mind at the time, but the agreements associated with this cable system would be negotiated in public. And yet what we're seeing here is a presentation of what appears to be a final document for approval tonight. It's certainly what the agenda says. And I think Mr. Katzman commented that he participated in some fashion with this thing as well. It wasn't negotiated in public by the council, and I think that's my point. Moving on.
Not negotiate any contracts in public. I think any contract that the town has ever been involved with, there's a negotiation process And any final review and vote is in public, and I know that I made that very clear in earlier workshops that if and when an HCA was presented, it would be discussed and voted on in public, and that's what we are doing. This HCA essentially came to fruition just after Christmas, and then there was some subsequent revisions that have been posted to the website. That's how long this has been in existence. The actual document came to counselors just after Christmas timeframe. So this has not been in the works. There's been frameworks for discussions and negotiations back and forth. That's what happens in a negotiation. This is what they came to agreement on, and it's what's presented before us tonight. And this is when we're discussing it, and we'll vote on it if at the conclusion of a public hearing. And that's pretty much how all of our contracts and agreements work.
Well, this is, certainly we talked about contracts here, but we're also talking about a plan that is going to affect this town substantially. And citizens of the town, many of them, I would say, are interested in the process so that they can have some say in the process instead of being presented with the fait accompli on a Tuesday night. So it's harder to catch up, as you must know, with these documents. You sit at home and you read them as carefully as you can. But our ability to read these documents is of course limited, as Mr. Katzman pointed out carefully for us, by a lot of legalese. And so, you know, it takes us some time to work our way through these documents. And we'd appreciate a little bit longer opportunity. And I'm referring to the red mark one, not the first one. So moving on.
If I may, Mr. President, I think there's a lot of people waiting in line here, and we have a time limit on how long we can be in this building. Could we kind of keep track of time, maybe give people a 5-minute limit? Otherwise, I fear that there's a lot of people that are not gonna get their chance to speak up if we keep spending 15 to 20 minutes on each person. So can we be respectful of everybody else standing in line and maybe try to keep it to 3 to 5 minutes per person?
You know, my remarks are always a lot shorter, but I don't get interrupted with that speech. You know, I get interrupted by members of council all the time. It's not.
We're trying to respond to your question and comments so that we don't have a shouting match back and forth when you return your seat.
I've never shouted at the council.
Okay, continue on.
My second to the last is the provisions for negotiations between Southcoast Wind and private citizens. As we all know, we've heard many times tonight that this agreement makes the town government essentially abandon any participation in any kind of negotiations, as far as I can see. So if there is a private negotiation, if there's a private issue between private citizens and Southcoast Wind, it doesn't appear to be any role in town government for mediating those things in this agreement.
No, but I mean, it's private property. Why would the town intervene in a private property?
Right. I'm gonna try to decide that. So your question is if a group of citizens came in front of the town council and said, we would like you to oppose X portion of this project, would you do that for us? If this agreement is signed, the answer is no, we cannot as the town council or the town proper. But that does not stop any citizen or member of this council individually from going and testifying in front of the CRMC or the EFSB, or if they're felt like it, going down the phone and testifying in front of them. Does that answer your question?
Not entirely, because I didn't say group. I'm referring to
Or
individuals.
Yeah, or individual.
But the reference to group is relevant because we've had these sort of things in the past. Councils just cast them all loose and they had to negotiate with the contractor themselves regarding the winter. And I don't want to go down that route. But I was hoping that there was something in this document that helped us solve that future problem. So my last comment is in section 16, which is entitled notice, there's a list of who you send notices to regarding the transactions involved with this agreement. And I would suggest that the town clerk be added so that it gets on the public record. Thank you.
Yeah, Roman number 16. Roman number 16. Yeah, but Roman number 15, you're talking about, well, correspondences with towns to be addressed to. Is that what you're looking at? Okay.
So we know where we're at.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Gilbert. I live at 155 Seaconnet Boulevard in Portsmouth in Island Park. And I actually just have two questions. I'm relatively new to town. I'm very impressed with some of the information people have come up with. I have to say, I am concerned about ownership of the energy. But my questions are two. One, how would this project affect our electricity rates? Number one. And the other thing regarding this agreement, I guess I'd like a little more information on how that's going to benefit the residents of Portsmouth, the money that's coming in. It's been kind of vague.
So the first question was, where does the electricity, how would?
It affect the rates, like would, you know, if we're putting in this rate system is, you know, there are people who say that actually your rates will go up because of the cost of the project, and you should be happy about that because it's green. Like a lot of people are saying, I'm not against alternative energy. I'm trying to understand how this is going to benefit the residents of Portsmouth.
Lawrence, is there a short answer to that? Because it's tied to the power purchase agreement with the energy provider, correct?
The energy is bid in ISO New England and or the state's utility process that is put through a rigorous process to understand the pros and cons to ratepayers, long-term perspective. And I would say that it is in your, believe it or not, that you're in good hands with those groups and your Department of Public Utilities making those decisions on how they consider the various mix of rates. I would highlight that renewable energy has the benefit of long-term predictability because we are not exposed to the volatility of changes in fuel prices.
So in previous projects, have rates been stable or lower, or do they tend to go up? Other wind projects?
Wind projects that I have personally been involved in, they've been very stable and they have held or been lower.
So the next question was about how would the money benefit the town?
Yeah, you know,
Sure.
as part of the agreement, the coast agreement, yeah.
So the money would be set aside for, you know, what's in the documents as climate resiliency projects or other projects beneficial to the town as determined by the town council. So these, we don't have specific dedicated projects, but they would be used for projects that benefit the town. Could be addressing flooding issues, climate resiliency. There's different things that could be done, but the money can be used by the town for these projects to benefit the town. It's, you know, the town has some discretion as to how they're going to use the funds, but the intent is to use them to benefit the citizens of the town.
All right, thank you.
Okay, there's lots of capital projects that could benefit from some funding.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the amount of money doesn't, in this day and age, doesn't seem that huge. So I
No,
just wonder
but
how far it's gonna go.
Well, but every little bit helps
Yeah.
because otherwise it's potentially coming out of taxes.
Yeah,
That's, you know,
Yeah.
there is something there.
okay, thank you.
Howard Mello, 158 Massasoit Avenue, Portsmouth.
You can speak up.
Sorry,
Okay.
you can bring the microphone over to you too.
Well, okay.
There you go.
So I'm here to ask you to please say no to the cables, basically because, well, let me tell you a little about myself. I hold the merchant mariner credential.
Miss Mello.
You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. You've gone through this on previous, we know who you are. And we know a lot about your background from previous, it's on video
Okay.
from previous. So if you could just kind of
So
hone
maybe
in on the
no one
HCA.
else, not everyone does.
But I'm not sure that you're back, okay?
Right, I won't do that.
I am letting her talk, but I'd like it to kind of reel into the HCA.
Okay. So now I have to find the spot that I want to really talk about.
Probably go to page 3.
Right at the end? where I talk-
I'm sure it's in there, I know you.
So, the areas of the Secana River, the Mount Hope Bay, that Southcoast are trying to build turbines on and prime fishing areas where they want to lay cables and are prime fishing and spawning areas for over 100 species of fish. And I know I've said that before, but you talk about the cable and it isn't just the cable. A cable is a connector. It's connecting those turbines to,
That we have no authority, those have already been, the
Right.
actual turbine field has already been approved and permitted by
but
the
you,
government.
I understand that, but you're advising,
We're advising the
Someone.
EFSB, the EFSB, our advisory opinion is on potential for road work, the potential for a noise variance if necessary, something, soil and erosion control, things that the town boards or departments would have jurisdiction over. The town does not have authority or jurisdiction over environmental resource areas, including wetlands and the bay. Those have been clearly identified that those advisory opinions will come from CRMC and DEM.
I understand that, but if you say yes to them,
Right.
as a host community, you are saying yes to everything else, basically.
No, we are saying, we are
You are saying
offering
it's
our
okay.
opinion,
You're
we are
saying it's
offering our opinion on the things that we have jurisdiction over. This is very similar to other advisory opinions that we've had to respond to for the EFSB.
Okay, can I finish?
You can.
So it will disturb the southern New England corn spotting, cod spawning areas also. There have been no independent studies done on these areas. And it's impossible to know how many species of marine mammals and cetaceans and fish along with microorganisms will be affected. The jet plowing, when you lay cable, the jet
We do
plowing.
not have any jurisdiction of jet plow. Ms. Mello, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be fair to what we have jurisdiction over. I'm not saying your concerns are not valid. In those concerns, their arena is during the public hearings and comment periods before CRMC and DEM. And there's a list that was on the website, on the presentation for EPA. There's also the Massachusetts groups. So there are other opportunities for you to voice your concerns over the agencies that have direct responsibility for their opinions.
Okay, so why are we even talking about this? Because Southcoast has no contract that's binding right now. And the SB won't even waste their time to review this without a valid contract. According to the chairman of the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board, the decision instead is resting on whether the project was commercially viable. He believes there's no proof of that since Southcoast had to win a bid, what was expected to be competitive solicitation by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. Keep in mind the Massachusetts part of the equation. Given Southcoast's record of bailing out of last agreements, they are not probably the first in line. Besides, all the extra money they'll be asking for will be trickled down to the consumer. So we're gonna take $23.3 million to tear up our pristine ecosystem and possibly ruin it for life, spread it out over 33 years. That's lunacy. Excuse me for saying this, but also say it about myself, that we probably won't even be alive in 33 years. So we passed this big problem to our children. In 33 years, I mean, okay, think about your age.
So where's the benefit to doing this? Money's not everything. Our ecosystem, our fisheries, our environment is much more important legacy to leave to our children than it is, then that's what they'll remember. You don't know what damage will be done. We already have some idea around the pilot driving and surveys and loud noises that there's been damage. Adverse impacts of wind farms on marine life concluded that noise, vibration, electromagnetic fields, and heat transfer alters marine environments. I don't think any of their actions would, if they think that any of their actions would harm marine mammals, they wouldn't need to ask for incidental takes from NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. If we allow these international companies to come in and basically rape our pristine Sakonnet River and Mount Hope Bay, who knows what will be next? Another company in line, turbines down the river, more dredging and plowing.
Back to the HCA, please.
We can't stand by and not be stewards of our priceless jewel we call home. Please don't let this international company come in here and all for their profit and not for ours. We would be accomplices to the devastation of our ecosystem, to our marine mammals, to our cetaceans and everything we love for the measly money. Are we that desperate? Like all of the other organizations who have taken their money, their children will always remember your decision and they will pay the price. I guess that is the answer.
Thank you for your time.
My name is Susan Kamal, and I live at 114 Park Avenue, Island Park. And first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for your patience. You guys are amazing. I find the greatest threat to our oceans and our beaches is the burning of fossil fuels. We have the opportunity to be part of the solution by supporting the transition to renewable energy. Yes, I'm getting to that. The last two storms hit Portsmouth, flooded. I'm not going to be as long as anybody else, so I'm just going to read this.
Focus on the HCA.
Thank you. I want you to move forward with the HCA for the sake of our children, for the sake of global warming. Fossil fuels give off carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, trapping heat like a blanket. To date, oceans have absorbed more than 90% of this heat from fossil fuels. And as water warms, it expands, sea levels rise. On top of this, we're getting wicked bad storms.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to be fair. State of the HCA, you did say you support it. I appreciate that. If there's anything else that you could add to it.
Well, for me, it's not about the 23 million, but it's about showing our grandchildren that we tried to stop global warming, because all our fish are going to be dead if we don't, with the heat that's happening in the ocean. So move forward, stick to the facts, and save our oceans. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nick Horton. I live at 75 Marshall Street in Providence. I've lived in Rhode Island since 2000 when I came here to study ecology, and I'm here in support of this host agreement and moving offshore wind forward. I believe that passing this agreement today will help the project be sustainable, will help, will allow it to move forward quickly and fulfill the needs of the state. There are a lot of technicalities to this contract, but the big picture is, will Portsmouth assist and collaborate, get paid to collaborate in order to help the rest of Rhode Island and even the rest of the world, to help us make Rhode Island energy independent, less dependent on foreign oil. Maybe there are some uncertainties in this contract. I personally trust your lawyer, but there is always going to be some uncertainty. What frightens me much more than any uncertainties in this contract is the uncertainty of what will happen to Rhode Island if we don't expand renewable energy.
Thank you. But since again, I appreciate the support, but if, again, just to the HCA.
I understand the people in this room are concerned about the potential dangers of having the power line with potential impact on their community or their ecosystems. I'd just like to point out in counter that the fossil fuels that we rely on instead cause disruptive and polluting facilities in other places.
I know, but
Places like where
we
I'm
do not have any jurisdiction outside of, the HCA is really for the town of Portsmouth. We have no jurisdiction outside of.
Sure.
So.
There's a give and take in all these decisions, and I'm just asking that as Portsmouth gives and collaborates to help make this happen, they keep in mind the collaborations and the accommodations that other towns have given to allow the energy that we all rely on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Christian Roseland. I live at 842 Hope Street in Providence. My day job is as an energy policy analyst. And so I'm available to comment on some of the things I've heard tonight. On the subject of the HCA, you guys are getting a hell of a deal. You're being given a minimum of $500,000 to potentially allow a cable to be buried. Underground cables are a lot less impact than overhead cables. And it's great that you're getting an underground cable. It's, you know, basically, it's really remarkable that these conversations have been dominated by conspiracy theories and absurdities. Tonight, I've heard climate change denial. I've heard claims that a European collaborative is Chinese owned. I've heard unsubstantiated claims of bribery. I've heard unsubstantiated claims that this will indebt Portsmouth by someone playing an amateur lawyer. Now, I want to be clear, I don't see any debt to Portsmouth in getting at least $500,000 more if the project goes forward for the promise in the future to allow a cable to be buried along rights of way that go along roads. So this is actually minimally invasive. In fact, for all of the power, we all use electricity and we all got to get it from somewhere. And there have been a lot of fights in New England over power lines. A lot of these have been because they're overhead power lines, right? And people don't like to look at them. In this case, you're getting something, or because they're going through sensitive habitats like wetlands or forests. In this case, you're getting something that's going along existing right-of-ways, along roads, in the least damaging. It's not even going to go through the beach, it's going to go under the beach. This is the most careful plan to lay a cable that I've ever seen, and you're getting $500,000 up front for it. Again, this is a hell of a deal. I do want to note that if we held up every infrastructure project with the kinds of absurdities that we've heard tonight, we would never build anything, and we all use electricity. So thank you very much for your time, and appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
Tom Green, 110 Sarah Drive. Could we put up exhibit B again? And hopefully while you're doing that, I'd like to start with a heartfelt thanks to Mr. Levesque for his unusual but exemplary behavior and not interrupting folks tonight. Nancy said you guys wouldn't go for it. Okay. Because of my training, I began looking at financials first. What kind of organization would put out a financial exhibit that does not even add up correctly? Have you guys noticed that? It doesn't add up? Well, take the total investment, no, at the top, total investment, it ends in a 3. You add up the two other ones, it would end in a 4. All the way through, 19 of the 33 years don't add up properly. I'm not sure who put that together, but I hope we're not seeing the sort of sloppy attention to detail that we can expect from Southcoast cable implementation. The yearly payments for 33 years range from 1% to well less than 1% of our present yearly budget. Under any reasonable inflation scenario, the payments will be hundredths of a percent of our budget 33 years out. Do you really think such minor payments adequately compensate Portsmouth residents for the disruption and risks we are taking? Remember, this is a Massachusetts project, not a Rhode Island project. If Rhode Island wants or needs any of the delivered electricity, Massachusetts will profit by selling that to Rhode Island users. Why should we take these risks for such a pittance when the Massachusetts towns are refusing to allow these cables on their land? Southcoast, then Mayflower, provided a good sum of money to Portsmouth to hire lawyers and engineers to investigate concerns about putting cables through the Portsmouth waters and property. I'm particularly interested in the engineering studies that were done to answer the technical and environmental questions that have been raised by the residents concerning the Sakonnet River. Can you give me a brief summary of the findings the council is using to decide that the Southcoast cable plant is safe for the Sakonnet River?
We do not have any jurisdiction over the Sakonnet River, Mr. Green. We do not have any jurisdiction over the Sakonnet River.
You have the ability to say you object to it or not. That's not jurisdiction, I grant you, but it is a power that this HCA takes away from you should you sign it. Okay, we're not gonna get an answer to that. For example, I wanted to know if core samples were taken along the proposed Sakonnet route to see what hazardous materials might be released. I understood in Mount Hope Bay in Massachusetts, there were samples taken. Were there any taken in the Sakonnet?
Not yet, but we intend to do that survey work when the time comes.
Okay. I also find very troubling that the actual path is not defined within the agreement now that Montauk has voted against allowing it on their property. If I lived in the northern area of town, I would not think allowing this ambiguity adequately protected my part of town. Portsmouth does not have it. I don't think Portsmouth has enough information to sign an agreement like this now. What's the reason for the rush? Thank you.
Good evening, Mackenzie Shea, 48 Quinneck Ave, Portsmouth. I have two questions related to the HCA. Ties into the negotiation of it. It was characterized, it has been tirelessly so. There was two representations made that there was back and forth, also that it was received at Christmas. First question, exactly how many drafts of the agreement were exchanged? Think about it like a volleyball game. How many times did it go over the net between you and Southcoast?
Well, I mean, like in any negotiation, there's notes and thoughts and
I am aware, so
brainstorming.
you can just answer the
Well,
question. Exactly.
I don't know, I don't have a specific. Thank you for the question, by the way. I mean, for people.
And
who
I
don't-
don't need a lesson in how contract.
I'm not,
negotiation.
I'm
I
answering
just
it
need
from,
to answer how many times. it was.
I have no idea. I don't
Is it
have.
2? Is it 10? Is it 20?
I don't
You have
know.
3 weeks since Christmas.
I don't know how many times we've been at this for several months and I don't have a specific number. I don't know how many drafts were prepared.
Okay, so was the representation earlier that it was received at Christmas inaccurate? Did I hear that incorrectly?
No, that's when it was posted. That was the final version that was posted on the, for the community to see and for the town to review and decide. That's what was posted. We weren't posting drafts of documents.
So how many do you think, in your professional opinion, as a lawyer, it went across?
I don't have a specific number.
You can't ballpark it.
No.
Okay, second question. Exhibit B totals 23 million. What was the first offer?
I don't think we're in a position to go into confidential negotiations
It is a
about.
public meeting. You can't answer the question. What was it?
I'm not going to go into the confidential negotiations that.
We're the town.
I'm not going to go into I'm not going to explain what people were saying in confidential meetings between the town and the.
So we don't
Southcoast
know
company.
how much you tirelessly negotiated it. We don't know what their first offer was.
This was not a public negotiation where every comment and every question was opened up for a public review and discussion. That's not the way this was done.
Yeah, but with transparency, I would think you would tell us how well you did negotiating it. Thank you.
I don't think I don't know how to explain to this.
All right, my name is Ralph Kraft. I live at 2327 East Main Road in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and I also own Crafty One Customs at 1980 East Main in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. So I own a fishing company, and as we know this, and I'm going to keep this to this agreement, Keith. I'm very impressed. All right, I look at this kind of like a lease because someone said earlier that like it's lawyer talk and it's in English, but it's not. All right, so this is where I look at this kind of like a lease agreement. And if you go to one, I think it's funny that on page 5, it falls under cooperation. I think it's quite comical. But it goes down and says the town agrees to not file or submit any briefs, motions, filings, or comments opposing the project and or offshore export cables with, or just basically it ties our hands. So the way I look at it is, if I have my house, which I do in Portsmouth, and I rent it out and I have an agreement, and that leasee that rented that room from my house basically said in the lease they could do whatever the hell they want, and we can't do anything, we can't evict them, we can't do a thing. I wonder why that's in there and why those words are put that way to where we have our hands tied and cannot do a thing. That's the first thing. Second thing, and then to you, sir, I see you smiling. I've seen you do it a couple of times. I don't take this, in any way, fashion, or form fun. The second thing is, within 5 years, if they go away and this whole thing falls apart, we're done. We get nothing else, correct? That's it. The money stops. That's what we get. Am I wrong? That's it. So in 5 years, this all falls apart. 2 years, it falls apart. There's no $23 million. There's going to be $750,000, which it is $750,000. Third thing that I'm hearing today about this is that if we don't accept this, if you don't accept this, they're going to put it through anyway. That's what I hear underlying that's going to happen. And so we're not going to get money. So I have this really weird thing, and my background in the fishing and everything you're asking me not to talk about. But I see where your hands are tied, and I think it's absolutely garbage. Right? So I understand if you do this, but I'm against it. And I don't know how in the United States of America, our hands are tied to hurt our own town, our own state, our own country. And you, sir, I have talked with you for 3 years, and we've asked for you to do these research on the Sakonnet River, and you're moving forward, and you still haven't done one damn research project. I'm out.
Good evening, guys. My name is Alexander Brock Crable. I live at 347 Broadway in Newport. I like it when you smile and laugh, and you seem like a pretty nice person. A couple things I want to address just first. Are there any other sorts of negotiations that are public in this regard, or is all these negotiations, no matter what, whether it's an agreement with Southcoast Wind or anybody else, that all happens in executive session, right?
All confidential.
And you guys have covered that, and there's a reason for that too, right?
Absolutely.
Can you explain the rationale behind having private negotiations and why that's important?
Well, I think the point is that you want a full and fair exchange of information. That both sides, have different positions. It's a negotiation, so each side brings to the table their wish list, say, other things that they're looking for. And no, you don't always get everything you ask for it, when you negotiate. But the conversations have to be honest. They have to be done in good faith, where each side to a negotiation has confidence that whatever is being discussed is not going to be then just, shared publicly for further, just really to potentially unravel any of the negotiations.
Or for their other competitors, correct?
Or for competitors, absolutely.
Okay, cool. The other thing is to the gentleman's last comment, our hands aren't tied here, right? What we're doing right now is you guys are deciding whether or not to sign the HCA. There are other public avenues for people to pursue if they have certain problems or discrepancies. You guys mentioned BOEM. Can you guys mention other sort of avenue? I know Kelsey mentioned it, I think, in Southcoast when over there.
Yeah, there were
The other avenues.
The other avenues are obviously the siting board, and I think the council president mentioned that there's going to be a public hearing in Portsmouth by the siting board at a future date. They will be coming here to take all concerns that anybody has, and many of these concerns that were raised tonight are exactly the kind of concerns that should be presented to the siting board when they'll be here in Portsmouth to hear those concerns. There's also the other state agencies, there's the siting board, there's the Department of Environmental Management, there's CRMC, there's the federal process, there's the Bureau of Ocean Management, Department of Interior, and other state, of course, there's other state agencies as well. So there's a lot of other places that those concerns can be.
Okay, so this is still America. I just wanted to just make sure this is still America. Our hands are. So this I'm sorry, I'm talking. Yeah, so this HCA is for $23 million and has no impact whether this project is going to move forward or not. It's just whether the town council approves this host community agreement for $23 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is the yearly budget for the town of Portsmouth? I think last year, like $15 or $16 million. 71?
Yes.
Okay, so this is roughly a third of that. Excuse me, I'm talking.
But to be clear, this money is considered one-time type money and would not be put into an operational budget to offset normal operational things such as salaries and plowing of roads and new fire trucks and new police cars.
Okay, copy. So, obviously over the past few weeks, we've been impacted on both the Southcoast community as well as, say, the Cliff Walk with some major damage. So the $13.7 million that the city of Newport just said it's gonna take to restore the Cliff Walk, would funds like that, if it was in Portsmouth, would funds like that cover that?
Or yes, or if a seawall needed to be built higher or something to that effect, sure. If shorelines need to be pushed back, things like that. We have a list of projects, excuse me, that are in our capital plan specifically towards resiliency. We also have other projects in our capital plan towards building better parks.
So,
So there's a lot of opportunities to utilize the money.
so without this money, where would the funding for those things come from?
Federal government grants, taxpayers.
Raising taxes?
Yep.
Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Dawn LaFleur, 24 Cedar Avenue, Smith Road Avenue. What?
Okay.
Okay. So, we can't talk about the whales, we can't talk about the fish, we can't talk about any of that stuff. But what we can talk about was what the gentleman brought up, which was on my mind and has been since the beginning of this, is all the pollution that's in the bottom of that river that's been there for the last 50 years. And now that the river's nice and clean, if you just leave it there, it's gonna be fine. But you start drilling through it and it's gonna blow up on all this stuff. And then it's gonna go all over the place. And this is where you come in, because when it ends up on our shore, right? And it contaminates everything, what are you gonna do about it? And $23 million, it won't even cover it, right?
Okay, and about this money. Because over time, right, this money is gonna keep going down. It's not gonna grow, it's gonna go down. You know, read this right here. I'm just against it, but still no sediment samples. And all that pollution that's in the ground needs to stay in the ground. Period. Good night.
Peter Roberts, 80 Armorad Avenue. What I'm bringing up is the actual thing that they showed on here was the film of Park Avenue flooded. And Park Avenue was flooded because the storm drains were not cleaned out. And like you brought up about the wall being high, that's fine. But the storm drains are down at the road, all right? Did you know this? You brought it up? Yeah. Okay. On the inside, the water pushes the sand up and blocks the holes that the drainage comes out.
But Mr. Roberts, but specifically on those two storm surges of the past couple of weeks, they came at a perfect time. It was high tide and south winds pushing that water up. So even if the storm drains were 100% clear, it wasn't going back out because the tide was higher.
The second rain, my daughter went down there and saw that. An hour later, the state people come down, clean the drain out, and the road was cleared in an hour. Completely clear. So if they had been cleaned out, I don't care what the water came up. It would have left. And it would take a while for those blockages to happen. The flooding happened and it had nothing to do with, earlier you mentioned sea level. No, it wasn't sea level. That's how low the road is. All right? So what we had was a picture showing the road flooded. And then mentioning other problems. We were set up with this. They were showing this to get people who don't understand the situation, that this was all because of sea level rise. I've been living here 75 years. I lived down at the beach, okay? I'm living in a house now that my parents moved into, or my father moved into in 1923, all right? I know this area, I know all about it. There is no sea level rise here. Absolutely nothing. And quit talking about it. Do some research. Yes, in 1938, the water level in front of my house was 4'5". And there was no name on hurricanes then. In 1954, the water level was 4'3". Because after the hurricane in 38, they put up the seawall. And the difference was those couple of inches. All right? And I know my parents would take me down with my brothers, throw us over the wall and say, stay here to go anywhere they wanted to go for a few hours. That's where we were babysitting, all right? I know this area.
Mr. Roberts, that explains a lot.
Yes, it does. It needs to be explained. Because you're not listening.
I am listening.
All right, well, I know what it is. And the fact that that picture was shown was trying to turn people's heads around. And tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong with the respect to, there are situations where tides are now higher. Maybe it was a maintenance thing.
On a full moon.
But, so the water was still higher. It was.
There is high.
So,
But that doesn't stop the drainage if the thing is open.
But here's the thing, Mr. Roberts, and there's a disconnect, and there are issues with the storm drains, there are issues with maintenance. But there are also real concerns where we're experiencing flooding in areas where we never experienced the extent of flooding.
But the picture was shown of Island Park. That has nothing to do with that.
That's.
And just about everywhere else you see the flooding, the storm drains are blocked.
Mr. Roberts, I'm gonna give you an example. I look out at Mount Hope Point, right, where the old Marina restaurant used to be. And the last storm, the water was up well into the grass. Now I've lived there my almost 50 years, okay? The water has been getting higher and higher every year. I'm now watching the point go underwater to the point where stuff was floating up onto it. There was debris floating up onto the park. So
why was it getting higher?
There's no
There's a
drains.
storm
There's no
drain.
storm drains out there.
Thank you.
There's no storm drains. Well, the water's, it's because of the
And
tide.
it's coming from other places.
Well, let's get back to the HCA.
One other thing, now I'm gonna bring something up. Thames Street.
Thames Street.
Back when I was a teenager, I'd go down there, it was completely flooded, all right? And it wasn't flooded for a long time, but now it's flooding again. And it all has to do with storm drains, because they are not being taken care of. Washington Bridge, when you come over there, you go down a little bit and go up and go into East
I'm gonna
Providence.
save someone a chance here. Skip, please, back to the HCA.
Yeah,
Please,
yeah.
just, I know,
And certainly don't point out anything that's facts, because you wouldn't like that.
I don't, I'm not,
You wouldn't like.
I don't mind the facts, Mr. Roberts. Yep.
I really apologize. I think we'll give, we'll try to give people more time to speak, but the fact of the matter is we only have 10 more minutes left. And I'd like to make a motion that we approve the HCA.
My name is Amos Apollo, 20 Nina Road. I did a lot of research on this project, engineering, construction, operation, maintenance. And I can assure you that these towers are not gonna last 33 years. So that's number one. I'm gonna try to focus my comments on the purpose of the meeting. And the purpose of the meeting is, do we think this is a good deal for the town of Portsmouth? I did a net present value discounted cash flow of the revenue stream. And it's not 23 million, it's probably 12 or 13 million. That's if both projects are in operation for 33 years. The minimum we're gonna get is 4 million. The first 500K goes to 3,500. That's if they do nothing. But if they do it, both projects for 33 years, we'll get at most 12, 13 million. Second question is, I guess the basic question is the disruption worth at a maximum 13 million? I think there are probably better routes. The best one would be either underneath, south of Quidnick, up West Passage, and connect to Brayton Point as Revolution 1 is doing. I believe that's right. I believe it's Revolution 1 that's
They're going to North Kingston.
that's going to Quonset Point. So why doesn't Southcoast do the same route from basically the same block area and go on, I'll use the word underneath, south of Quinnick up to Quonset, and then it's a short distance from there to Brayton Point. So I think that's the logical alternative. That's it, fine.
Thank you. Any time?
Hi, my name is Robert T. Leahy Jr. I live at 154 Cottontail Drive in Portsmouth. And I'll lift this up a little bit. I just have one question on the HCA. You said there's like 2,000 feet that the city of town of Portsmouth controls, is that correct?
Approximately.
Okay. All right. So Portsmouth has been settled since the early 1600s. Anytime you dig into something, I don't know how deep they're gonna go. I've heard, 40, 50 feet in some cases, other cases 6 feet. What happens, who's responsible if we dig into something we really don't want to dig into? In other words, if it's a toxic dump or whatever, just pollution up there, you know what? Who's responsible for that? Is it the town of Portsmouth or is it?
No.
Yeah.
It would, well, first of all, there would be, I'm gonna say there'd be some due diligence done to identify if there was a toxic dump. But I think we would know if there was a toxic dump along the route based on their analysis. And again, the permitting agencies are gonna be the ones that would also weigh in on that. If it's under the river or if it's under the wetlands, that they would be the ones taking a critical look at that.
So they'd be taking samples and everything.
Well, I think.
Boring holes. And-
Yeah, I mean, for something of this magnitude, they would have to do borings greater than the depth that they're gonna drill in order to understand, are they drilling, and maybe they're drilling through solid rock. I don't know. I don't.
Well, that's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I just want to be clear that it would be our responsibility, not the town's.
Hi, my name is Chris Gadbois and I live in Island Park, and I'm grateful to you all for the opportunity to let us all speak. And I would just urge you to act quickly to take the opportunity that we have in front of us for the town of Portsmouth to lead the solution to the problem that is facing not only the marine animals and that folks spoke so passionately about, but humans and the rest of the environment as well. Thank you.
Ken Mulder, 64 Peralt Street, Portsmouth. Been about 32 years since I've been in this room. I'll keep my comments strictly to the HCA.
How much nicer it is, though. You got comfy seats instead of wood.
Yes. If the council voted against the HCA, what happens to the cable project coming through Portsmouth? It really is still up to the EFSB. It could go through.
So in effect, if it's approved by the government agencies, we're getting it whether we want it or not. This is to determine whether we're gonna get a nickel for it.
This is more about working in cooperation with them to mitigate impacts that occur within the town's property, the town's jurisdiction. Yeah, yes, but to your point, we do not have the final say, and we would only be offering an advisory opinion. And we've done that, as I referenced earlier, on other projects before the EFSB, and those projects could still move forward.
So Montauk saying we don't want it on our property doesn't stop them from putting it on their property.
I don't know. I don't know what the process would be. I don't want to speak to that.
Okay, understood. And then, Council President, I believe it was you that was said, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, at the beginning of the meeting, that you're voting on this contract as it stands now. This contract has a map with 2 possible routes. And I believe you stated at the beginning of the meeting, if there's a different route, we're doing this all over again. This contract would then be gone, thrown out, and you're going to have to all vote on this again.
Well, it'd be potentially on a different location because it may affect different areas of the town. So this was very specific to these areas where they've done a lot of preliminary investigation work.
Yes.
But it could be the EFSB could say, hey, we want you to look at a different route, which would then be a little bit of a curveball, but there are provisions in here that if the route is similar in location, we could probably negotiate something. But if it's a totally different route, then we'd probably be starting over. So back to negotiating.
With the potential of having to start over where they've already provided another map with routes that are significantly different than the 2 that are in this proposal. Why would we even want to vote on this at this time?
I think and I'll let Southcoast defer. I think that initially there were 3 routes shown through Portsmouth. And I think through the process, it's really been honed in on these are 2 of the preferred routes that they are trying to pursue. And I think it's their application to the EFSB and everyone else. So they are going to try and, present their evidence. But if the EFSB says,
This route's a no-go, we gotta figure it out.
Yeah,
understood.
But if they think that there's enough information to satisfy the requirements, then they could absolutely condition or approve that it go in one of these areas. That is possible.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna be last, but maybe I will be. My name is Tom Clemo. I live on John Dyer Road in Little Compton. This project, as it pertains to me in Little Compton, only relates to the cable running up to Secana River. For the project, however, the issue of moving ahead on projects of renewable energy that begin to mitigate climate change is something that goes beyond the river, this town, the state. And as someone else mentioned, if you're looking for perfection in everything, it's like looking for a unicorn. I am so impressed with the professionalism of this council. I attend some of my own town council meetings, and I would encourage them to come here and watch you. I also appreciate the research that you guys have done on this project. It's amazing. When issues have come up to say, hey, what about this? What about that? You've had answers. It just shows the amount of work you've done. And I think I want to commend you for how proud you should feel for all the work that you've done to bring this heavy load, to this issue. It's also wonderful to have an open discussion on the matter for the HCA. So, as a citizen of Rhode Island, as an abutter to Portsmouth, in effect, by the river, looking for perfection on all aspects, all agreements, is just something that if you're going to wait for that, this is never going to happen. And the climate change and ocean warming, etc., is just going to continue to roll.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Carseller, 63 Leach Road. You guys said that the marked up agreement was put in this weekend. Is that correct?
It was posted Friday.
So all of you feel like you've had enough time to really look at this with every single change and feel 100% about your vote tonight. Are you voting tonight on this? Possibly?
Possibly.
So you feel that the changes you're good with to already vote on it? Just I hope if that's what you're gonna vote, I hope you're good with that. Maybe you are, because you're a lawyer, but not everybody is. Southcoast was talking about in the future doing Secana River samples. Why don't we wait to see what the samples are before we sign this piece of paper? In the agreement, it showed a map with 2 routes, but Southcoast tonight showed a map with 3 routes. On the agreement that you will be signing, is it with 2 routes or 3 routes?
2 routes, Exhibit A.
Okay.
Just 2 routes.
Do both of those routes go through Montauk?
Portion.
Okay, so if Montauk says no, then I'm assuming Southcoast will look for a different route. And the president said that we would look at a new contract. But looking at this contract, it does say quotes or other such locations, which then would be other locations. And in another paragraph, it quotes, the town agrees not to oppose such approvals, permits, waivers, and or request for relief. I'm assuming that means if Southcoast finds other routes that are suitable for them, that we can oppose it. Am I wrong?
Well, let me clarify
Okay.
what my understanding of it is.
Negotiate in good faith.
We
would negotiate in good faith over all, another route.
Is that in this contract?
Yes. Yes.
So if we don't go with one of the 2 routes in this,
Yes.
That's what this states, if we don't go with those two routes, even though he showed a picture with 3 routes on it tonight?
Right, that's correct, yes. Yes, that is correct.
This is a question for Southcoast. What if we say no? What do you do?
If the council decides to vote and says no, we'll be disappointed with that decision from council. As noted tonight, we've been working for months in good faith on putting together a solid agreement that we think is beneficial to both parties. So if the town council says no, then hopefully we will get back to negotiating and be back here with a new agreement for the community to review and give comment on that is a bit better. But we're confident that we have put in a lot of work with this agreement and are hopeful for a positive vote.
Okay, that's noted. What if we say no to any agreement? What does Southcoast do from there?
We're continuing to develop the project.
So, honest answer, would you go for eminent domain to go with underneath our town to do what you need to do? Yes or no?
I don't have an answer to the eminent domain. We're not looking to take eminent domain of the community, but we've continued to pursue permitting the project at state and federal levels.
So if we said no to Portsmouth 100%, would you then go towards Massachusetts again, even though they've said no?
Massachusetts has not said no. We do have interconnection rights at Brighton Point in Massachusetts, and we'll continue to develop the project to make interconnection at Brighton Point.
Okay, where will the line go if it doesn't go under Portsmouth?
We will evaluate other options. As of now, the plan is to go through Portsmouth.
So you have no other backup?
We do have a route evaluation process that we went through when we developed the permits, and we could go back into our project envelope. But that was a process that, you know, was a lot of engineering. And through that process and through that assessment, we believe that going through the Secana and through Portsmouth is the safest route for the people and the environment. So
wait, safest route for the people, what people?
Of, you know, least disruptive, I should say, rather than overland routes or, you know, there's a lot of different factors that go into route evaluation. So it's, you know, a bunch of scoring. It depends on what route you're.
Is this your first agreement with a town that you have put together for a host agreement on this project?
We're discussing host community agreements with other towns. This is the first one with Southcoast Wind to be discussed with a town council.
What other towns?
We're discussing a host community agreement with Somerset as well, where we intend to build the HVDC converter station.
Were you in talks about a line going through another section
of what?
Of Massachusetts?
We're connecting to Brighton Point in Massachusetts, so our cable will be there as well to connect to the converter station on private property in Somerset.
So Southcoast Wind was never talking about a different line going through Falmouth?
No.
No? Okay, I'm wrong
That's a
then.
different project in time.
Okay.
No, it's Falmouth.
Okay, all right, I got it.
We
That's
do have, Falmouth is still part of our project envelope too, but so originally we were developing the Falmouth project, intending to connect to Falmouth. As we mentioned, we have 2,400 megawatts available, and for project 2, both Brighton Point and Falmouth are an option for interconnection as we develop that. So project 2 is in really early stages of development.
Okay, but this is the only agreement you have with anybody right now that you're trying to get.
Correct.
Okay, and I do agree with what President had said earlier. Some of the wording's vague. When you say approximately 1,200, it should have said maximum 1,200 megawatts. So if you guys approve to sign it, you're signing it exactly the way it is right now, correct?
We could, if it's a minor clarification like that, and we could agree to it, then,
Because the word approximately is, you get paid approximately $1 million.
well, no,
I just, you know.
I think the testimony or the explanation is that the cables can only, they're a maximum of 600.
For now, yeah.
No, those cables,
yeah.
those cables that are in the project.
Yeah.
Can only, the maximum they can take is 600 megawatts each. So there's two cables, that's 1,200 megawatts for phase one, 1,200 megawatts.
Then I would like to see maximum then. I guess.
It
when-
can't be more.
When you're vague, it makes me a little nervous.
But let's
Because
just
I
take
feel
that.
like there's a lot of things in here that are vague. And
Fair
so I
enough.
just like to make sure you guys are very secure with your vote if you decide to vote tonight on this.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I don't mean to interrupt. I know we are still in open hearing, but I just wanted to note that there's been a motion made. I'd like to second it.
But yeah. Right. But, yeah, we're not gonna vote on the motion.
Carl Van Warmerdam, 11 Bay Avenue, Barrington. So, the majority of the people come up here from Portsmouth have been against this agreement. And five people tonight are gonna vote on a 30-year agreement. My question is, why aren't the people of Portsmouth voting on this agreement?
Hi. My name's Bob Willett. I live at 155 Cottontail Drive. And, all my life, I've kind of looked at business cases. And this is a good case. You kind of see, these are the numbers, we're going to get all this revenue. But I was curious if anyone's looked at the impact of property values along the routes that have been taken. And will we lose property tax revenue higher than what we would be continuing to get under this agreement over the life of this problem, right? So, and if you're gonna put an easement, which we talk about as risk, somewhere values go down when risk goes up, right? And so I'm just curious if there is an impact to the town budget, from a property tax perspective in doing a project like this. And again, it's just looking at the business case. So I don't know that you have the answer, but we should kind of try to figure it out. So,
Well, I mean, first of all, there are some homes along Boyd's Lane, but it's a utility easement. And the cable would be underground, so there really is not, I'm not sure what, like any other utilities, they would be buried.
well, we talk about the safety of the electricity, but none of us want to live under a high tension wire.
Right.
And so if we're 6 feet above it, you kind of have to say, is there an impact or not? So I don't want to debate that, but my question is, have we looked at, the full budget impact on what we're attempting to do? I'll leave it at that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Second.
Yeah, okay. So we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
All right, you're the last speaker.
Real quick,
I know.
I'm not well spoken.
It's okay.
This business with China in America,
Sir, sorry.
I don't like it.
Name and
Name and
address.
address
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry, Keith Henry, 18 King Road, Middletown. You keep letting China into this country, we'll have no country left. I don't care what this has to do with, I mean, I just,
Sir, that's not really,
but I did it. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so we had a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0 to close the public hearing. We also had a motion and a second, but it'll be for discussion. So I think Mr. Yeah, well, I think who wants to speak? Yeah.
Thank you. Can we pull up the appendix B? The map, let's see, it's appendix A, excuse me.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring that up because if you look down on the right-hand corner, there's a little inset there with a purple line on it. And that actually is an over-the-road map, which would take you through. Well, up a little, there you go. It would take you through Westport, across Fall River, and then you're right there at the power plant. Just take off from there, right? Is that a fourth route? The fifth route? Oh, okay. Well, I stand corrected. I know we talked about a line coming over the road from Westport through Fall River and down to Brayton Point. So I'm a little off on that one. I don't doubt that. I don't think the people in Falmouth want it either, because originally this project, I believe, was, I might be wrong again, was 1,200 megawatts for Portsmouth and 1,200 to Falmouth. Now it's 2,400 here. Is that something you could comment on?
Sure, no problem. So our construction operations plan, both options remain on the table for project 1. We are planning to interconnect to Brayton Point. For project 2, it's still to be determined. Our preferred connection is at Brayton Point, and then we still have the second option in Falmouth as needed. There are some grid and technical issues going on in Falmouth with the capacity of their grid and their ability to accept 1,200 megawatts of energy, which is why we've started to explore a second option at Brayton Point.
But you have received pushback from the Falmouth neighborhood.
Correct. There is opposition on Cape Cod in general around offshore wind.
Thank you. I think you've heard the opposition from this, a lot of people speaking tonight, but I'm probably on the losing end of this vote, but I will say my piece. Being new to this council, myself and Mr. Levesque, to date, I've only been to 2 town council related closed door meetings about Southcoast wind. Although we were briefed about a $1 related offer for a host community agreement, I saw the agreement for the first time, as did the general public, right around Christmas time, when it was put on the town's website. This past Saturday, I saw it for the first time with new markings on it. It was an updated proposed host community agreement with Southcoast Wind Energy LLC, which I highlight. They are a company that you'll see them when they build this product, and gone they will be. I found out tonight also that, you know, at least 2 councilors here contributed to the red line changes. I was not asked to contribute to that, and all those changes in my mind should have been made here tonight in a negotiation before the people of Portsmouth. That's my opinion. I did not receive an email even notifying me that there are new changes, or that this was even put on the town's website. I questioned the changes. When, why, who made the changes? I was told the host community agreement was updated to fix typos and to clarify the terms by the negotiating team, which I just found out who they are tonight. I'm in the dark here. I'm sorry. I could ask more questions, but I shouldn't have to. I should be filled in on this critical information of this type. So, other than, my initial question was, other than the town administrator, the solicitor, and 1 attorney for Adler, Pollock, and Sheehan, I'm not sure who else is on the negotiating team. I've been told that it has to do with each different people on the town, within the town administration, but I would doubt that they sit in on every meeting. So basically, we have a small amount of people that have negotiated this contract, which I might say was in excess of $150,000 spent, probably not recognizing the total cost from our own town solicitor. It's just a Adler, Pollock, and Sheehan. So it might be too late to stop the wind energy madness machine, as I call it, by foreign LLCs. But this agreement attempts to gag the town for what seems like a large sum of money that they may or may not hand over to the town, to a proposed wind energy company, LLC, that does not have a customer to buy their proposed power from, nor any agreement with any entity in Portsmouth to run a cable underground to get from Secana River to Mount Hope Bay. Montauk Country Club does not have an agreement. It was turned down by the membership, although they initially said yes. Why are we rushing this? Shouldn't we be looking at the decision of the Energy Facility Siting Board, which basically told Southcoast Wind, we are not going to review your project until you have power purchasing agreements? Are we really here to approve a host community agreement for cable across Portsmouth that hasn't been approved by any viable landowner on the cable route? Except for maybe the state. Does anybody know what the state has approved? Are there any approved contracts for the use of Boys Lane and the state-owned portions of Anthony Road? I don't know. Does anybody here know? Taking exception to the town administrator's email statement that no changes were made that alter the agreement, I suggest that sections 2.1A and B have new language reading, quote, or other such locations as otherwise mutually agreed by the parties. I don't want to give the impression that I will be supporting this agreement or any other version of it, as no amount of money is worth the risk of a high voltage underground cable enforcement on land or within the Secana River. But shouldn't the town council and the citizens of Portsmouth know the route of this cable before signing this agreement? Very nebulous contract that it is. It's all about Southcoast Wind. Regarding the initial $500,000 payment, is there a plan for that money? Referencing the section 6.7 contingency, the town could only receive the $500,000 if the project fails. If Southcoast Wind fails to commence construction, commence commercial operation, or ceases operation for the project, the annual payment that remains becomes null and void. A purchasing power agreement with Eversource may be for 15 to 20 years. If Southcoast Wind is successful in obtaining one, but there may not be a second power and purchase agreement after that initial one, which would stop payments to Portsmouth if they were failed to get a second power and purchase agreement. A current wind energy project in Massachusetts has a hosting agreement, they call it something different, with another wind farm. They received a payment for a lesser amount than was agreed to. Could that happen here? I would say yes, that is possible. Prior to the town's first meeting with Southcoast Wind, Lawrence Mott, a nice man as it seems, came to Portsmouth, sailed his boat here in Portsmouth, possibly lived on it. And I think he might have lived on it, but he was introduced to various people and organizations to further his limited liability company's goal of getting a cable down the Secana River, across Portsmouth to Mount Hope Bay to Brayton Point. We are just another necessary checkbox to get approval by EFSB. Signing this agreement takes us from being friends and acquaintances to business partners. We will be looking for the money and they will be looking for us to, quote, not oppose Southcoast in development of its project and the onshore export cables, unquote. Again, to me, the onshore cables with no known or approved route are the lesser of the invasive process to bury these 4 power cables with at least one communication cable. The Secana River is the most pristine body of water in Rhode Island. Do we want to risk damaging it in various ways by allowing cable to be jet plowed into the river bottom? I, for one, do not. Although I intended to listen openly tonight to hear reasons that make this a sensible and worthwhile project for Portsmouth, I think it's obvious that I don't approve and I will not support this Southcoast Community Agreement. Further, I've been advised that if approved, that the town, quote unquote, the town may not oppose this project and onshore export cables, but individuals like myself included may continue to exercise their rights to free speech and oppose or promote the project and cables. And that's where I stand. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I do want to clarify one thing, just, so we had an emotion in a second, but there was, and I just want to get council's opinion on this, because there was a lot of discussion on the first page, fourth paragraph, where it was the approximately 1,200 megawatts each.
You could amend the motion.
Could we amend the motion to be a maximum of 1,200 megawatts each? For if the agreement were to be approved? I understand that, but is that, would that be acceptable?
Let me address a point of technicality. So as I stated, the ISO New England, it has a injection maximum of 1,200. That is, and Daniela, you work in these things. The rating is the capacity of the project. We do also consider energy besides rating, and it's possible that it could be 1205, 1208, and this is where you get into the difficulty of, do you fall out of range? So that's really the reason why it said approximately. So I'm trying to think, maybe the attorneys here have an idea, because I fully agree. I want to tighten it up and be definitive, but I don't want to get us in a twisted little corner.
On page 6, it says 1,200 megawatts phase or such other megawatt capacities as may be approved by the siting boards and or other relevant agencies. I mean, you could just repeat the same language.
Yeah. I just maybe did this eliminate. You big project.
I concur.
So we would just substitute the language that was in which section?
6.1.
Substitute the language which was in section 6.1. Yeah, just construction of, well, it says approximately
It says approximately, but then it clarifies or other such.
megawatt capacities.
Siting board.
Yeah.
They are approving. Yeah, it's what the siting board approves regardless, right?
The design is for 1,200 for each phase, and I believe based on the explanation that if it's 1205, that's not a, I think the fear might be that it could be 1,400 or something, and that's just not possible, right? These things are designed for 600 megawatts each. It might be a slight variation, but it's within the allowable standard. It would still be termed a 1,200 megawatt cable.
Right.
All right, I think I'm okay with that. We could.
Yeah. All right, I just want to speak in response to a lot of the commentary we heard today. I want to say thank you to a lot of the folks that came out to speak. I guess I'll caveat what I'm going to say by going on a limb and saying that if you don't believe in climate change, you probably didn't vote for me. Because I do, it's here and it's a big issue and we really do need to address it. So like we've said many times, we really don't have jurisdiction over whether the project goes forward or not. There's been a lot of work that has gone into permitting and engineering. What we're here to vote on is the host agreement only and how it impacts Portsmouth and whether it's a good deal for Portsmouth or not. I am not a lawyer. I'm an engineer, so I defer to our lawyers and other folks that know a lot more about this to have negotiated the best deal for us. But I know that when we first had discussions about this, the objective was to, if the project is going to go forward, let's make sure that there's a benefit to Portsmouth. And this is one very solid way of getting benefits to Portsmouth. There is a lot of stuff we can do with this money. There's a lot of projects sitting in our capital improvement plan. There's a lot of projects that we apply for grants for year after year that could benefit from this financially. So I defer to our lawyers. I've read the agreement. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand all of it. I am an engineer though, and I do understand the massive amounts of work that has gone into getting this move to this point and getting this project advanced forward. So I do
also feel very strongly that it's important for Portsmouth to support this and to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And by supporting this host community agreement, we can hopefully be a small part of the solution. And rather than just being one more impediment to making progress on offshore wind. Like the gentleman from Little Compton said, and I wholeheartedly agree with, there is no solution to climate change that has zero impact. Every option we have has an impact. Unless we are talking about no longer having electricity, no longer driving our cars, no longer, wearing modern clothes, everything has an impact. We are the impact. And so the big picture here is to try to minimize that impact and do what we can to leave the world in a little bit better shape for our children and our grandchildren. And offshore wind is a massive part of that. And we have to be a part of the solution. And this host community agreement helps us be a part of the solution and benefit from it. So I wholeheartedly support the host community agreement. And I beyond the host community agreement, I would go above and beyond to do anything that Portsmouth can to support Southcoast Wind going forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a project that has us all torn in different ways. Some may be torn because of climate change and things have to happen no matter what. I'm personally torn because I know and fully believe that the way the Rhode Island state is set up and the Energy Facility Siting Board is specifically set up to avoid situations where any town says, forget it, we're not letting you through. Facility Siting Board comes along and says, you're getting it no matter what. So my concern is, I have a couple of scenarios. One, the HCA is approved by the town council. There's a payment of $500,000. Best case scenario, the project never happens. Two, we say no. They get all their approvals from BOEM, CRMC, State of Rhode Island. It goes through, and instead of $23 million, whatever your net present value mathematics are, whatever, you get 2.6. I still have my owner. I do this job for the best. We have a multitude of jobs up here. One is a fiduciary responsibility to the town of Portsmouth and their taxpayers. You can call it blood money, you can call it whatever you want. But as a counselor, we have to make sure that we're doing what is potentially in the best interest of Portsmouth. We don't know what's buried in the Seconic River. We don't know what's going to get dug up. That's right, because they're going to do the studies. Fine. That doesn't matter. We are not going to have a shouting match. I have a microphone, so I'm going to win. But my concern is if we say no, we get nothing, and they still put it right down Boyd's Lane. There's no maybes about it. It's going down Boyd's Lane. They did a very nice job of couching. We would look at other areas, I get it. But their main goal is to go down Boyd's Lane, whether it's through Montauk, around Montauk. The only other alternative they have is to go right up Snipe River underneath the bridge, which they're tearing up even more. So you have multiple steps here of looking at things. There are protections in there in order, if they do change the location, we have the right to come back in and open the contract and renegotiate with them. It's not a done deal. It's not a static contract. It's not, okay, we've signed it, it's done. They're gonna go off and do whatever they want. So I begrudgingly think I'm going to support it, but I'm gonna listen to the rest of the council.
I'll be brief. I think my fellow council member Abbott was very eloquent and covered all the bases I would. But I just will reiterate a couple of those thoughts, which is I know that climate change is real and is not a hoax. And if you don't want people on the council who believe that, then don't vote for me. I believe that Southcoast Wind was being diplomatic when they said they would press forward with the project. That's nice words. What they meant was they'll get this done, whether or not they have an HCA. I'm sorry, put words in your mouth. The EFSB exists by law because of federal statutes that govern it and drive it, so that host communities can't stop large-scale energy facilities. Otherwise, we would not have large-scale energy facilities of any kind anywhere. And so the EFSB is fully empowered to grant easements like Portsmouth would, whether we like it or not. And so I believe, as a responsible town council member, I have a choice to look after the best interests of all of the people of the town of Portsmouth, which, by the way, are a lot more than who showed up tonight. We're over 17,000 inhabitants here. A lot of them are children who will inherit this earth from us, God willing. I want to make sure that when they roll their eyes thinking about us, it's not going to be because we neglected to take care of climate for them, but because of, oh, can you believe they built so many pickleball courts or something, right? I'm going to support this because I believe our choices are cooperate and get the best, to look after the best interests of the people of the town of Portsmouth in the construction phase and get paid for some of the inconveniences we will have to deal with, or it will go through anyway, and we will get nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Katzman, and I want to thank, all my counselors for weighing. Oh, sure. One last comment.
For those of you who want to see how and I hope you all show up, how the Energy Facility Siting Board public hearing goes, I invite you all to come here, this very auditorium, next Wednesday night, for a hearing by the Energy Facility Siting Board on a permanent installation of a large-scale LNG facility in Portsmouth. It's going in on Old Mill Lane. It shouldn't go in on Old Mill Lane. This may upset some of you, but the best option is to put a pipeline, a secondary pipeline in Mount Hope Bay. For those of you who don't know, they are putting in another pipeline that's going to traverse from Little Compton over to Portsmouth, and they're going to dig up the Seconic River to do it. So I invite and I urge all of you to come next Wednesday night to oppose it so you can see how, unfortunately, the sausage is made. In terms of the motion that is on the table, I would like to make a motion to amend and request an initial payment of $1 million and not 500,000.
Even though I oppose this concept at all, I would second Mr. Hamilton's motion for discussion.
Any discussion from council? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. That was a dollar rounding error through the Excel spreadsheet, because it was 7, it said 3, so it was, should have been a 4. It was a rounding. Okay, so we had an amended motion, a motion to amend. Well, yeah, we have to vote on the amendment, which was to increase to request the initial increase to $1 million.
I have a question. How would that work?
You lean over to Lawrence and say, "Bring you up to $1 million."
You can't approve that right now, can you?
Yes.
Yes. No, you can't.
Yes.
No.
That is correct. I want to make sure everyone hears the discussion. We here, sitting here tonight, do not have the authority with our board to make that.
Okay, but we can,
I don't disagree with your amendment, but at this juncture, I think it's just going at the works. Because it negates the entire negotiation process.
it doesn't gum up the works. What it does is amends the motion to $1 million. It puts it in the agreement from our side. Southcoast has not voted on this, their board has not voted on this. They're gonna bring it back to their board and say, the town wants $1 million instead of 500,000. Should we take it or leave it?
I'd like to hear what our lawyer has to say about that.
We negotiated, we came in at different positions, and this is as good as we could have gotten it to get to this point. We asked for more, we went back and forth, and, and as in any great negotiation, you settle on, you give some, you take some, you get some, you lose some. I mean, that's just the nature of negotiation. So it's where we ended up. That's pretty much all I could say. Where we ended up to get to an agreement, and the agreement takes into account a lot of other payments were adjusted up and down. So it's really it's a reflection of the entire agreement together. All the payments are intended to work, holistically together. That's where we ended up. That's pretty much where I can leave it at that. Now, what the council wants to do is up to the council.
So reasoning behind it is the number that came up today of $60 million payout to get out of the contract. I'm thinking $500,000 isn't gonna be a big deal.
So I just want to put in my 2 cents. And I appreciate the negotiation that's gone on to date. I think it was done above board and with good faith from both sides. And just like you said, Mr. Mont, you don't have the authority from your board to up it. And our guys felt that you guys got to a certain deal. So now it's going to be maybe it comes down to board versus board. If this motion is approved and we approve it with the initial payment of $1 million, and then we'll allow, if it's approved, we'll allow Southcoast to weigh in. I think that's what I'm hearing here. And it's no disrespect to either negotiating team. I think that's, if approved, that's where we're at. So I think we have a motion and a second to increase the initial payment from $500,000 to $1 million.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say I respect the work done by the negotiating team. And I know there was a lot of give and take, and I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
So it's 3-3, so it doesn't pass. Correct? Okay, so we now have a motion and a second on the approval of the host community agreement. Correct? On the original motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
So the motion passes 5-1 with Mr. Gleason opposed. Okay, so that was the first item on our agenda. The second, well, it's still part of the first agenda. We need a motion. Hold on. We need a motion on the fine.
Motion to make findings pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 43-3-9.10, as stated in Section 6.9 of the HCA, that the granting of an exemption of stabilization of taxes will inure to the benefit of the town by reason of A, the willingness of Southcoast as a manufacturing and commercial concern to locate its facility in the town, and B, and improvement of the physical plant of the town that will result in long-term economic benefits to the town and the state.
So that's the motion, and we need a second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-1. Mr. Gleason opposed. And at that, it concludes our public hearing on this agenda item. Want to thank all those who were here tonight. We do, again, folks, you do still have opportunities to weigh in on this. Individual council members can still weigh in on this. And the town still has an obligation, the boards, to weigh in with advisory opinions on the things that are under the town's jurisdiction. So we still have a road ahead of us, and we would be looking to work in the spirit of cooperation with Southcoast. Future meetings.
Can you, you just mentioned the meeting I mentioned for the public hearing for Old Mill Lane at 6 o'clock here next Wednesday.
The meeting for the public hearing for Old Mill Lane with the EFSD is 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Wednesday the 24th.
Wednesday, the 24th at the high school auditorium. Future council meetings are January 22nd, 6 p.m., which is here at the auditorium, February 12th, and then February 26th, both back at town council meeting, town council chambers. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.